Yes.
The Leaf Spring Army sends its regards.
Hello, everyone. I'm the Enforcer, and I'm accompanied by Enforcer Matt.
And good evening, folks. It's Enforcer Matt, and welcome back to day 1316 of the War News Stream. And today we have very, very big news out of Ukraine. We are hearing that the Zaporizhzhia Nuclear Powerplant is facing a possible meltdown in just mere days, and apparently it's worse than we previously thought. Also, U.S. officials are assisting Ukraine in striking mainland Russia with long-range strikes, and now France is warning of an attack from Russia potentially very soon, and they are ready for war, they say, tonight. So, very big news today, and it's good to see you all once again.
And, of course, we're going to be covering the past 24 hours of news from around the world, as we have been able to hear significant developments in practically every single corner of the globe over the course of the day. And, of course, I do have to say this really quickly before we even get into the summary. Today, like many others, has been a massive day in its own way. There's at least 6 major stories that came out of the day. Starting primarily with our summary, we have been able to hear that inside of the Zaporizhzhia Nuclear Powerplant, the IAEA, the International Atomic Energy Agency from the United Nations, has sounded the whistle or alarm, stating that the situation is actually far worse than originally anticipated, either by the state of Ukraine or by the international community at large. It is now believed that the nuclear power plant may be on the verge of meltdown within the next several days, as it does appear that emergency generators may have not been kept up to an operational standard, or at least the 100% optimal standard, and may actually be prone to some form of a failure or a lack of fuel within just the next few days alone, most likely the next 108 hours. We have also been able to hear at the same time that the Republic of France has stated that they are going to be ready for war as of tonight. According to statements coming out of the Republic of France, it does appear quite evident that French officials and the government believe that war inside of Europe is quite literally only hours or days away on any given single period of 24 hours. And for this reason, the French will now be at a level of constant readiness such as which has not been seen since the middle of the Cold War. The French also have been in the process of seizing a Russian tanker, which we reported on yesterday, near to the area of the port of Saint-Nazaire, which appears to be an incredibly large development, at least within that region, while at the same time, we have been able to hear that Israel is preparing to take strikes on Iran, as Israel is now publicly confirming that they do have intentions and plans to conduct some form of a strike against the Islamic Republic of Iran for their continued development of nuclear weapons. The United States has also provided a diplomatic shield to the Kingdom of Qatar, stating that any attack on Qatari soil will be viewed as an attack on the United States itself, and this comes just a day after a significant U.S. Air Force presence has started to arrive within the area and landed at the Al Udeid Air Base. We have also heard that inside the United States of America, there has been an unprecedented flight of E-6 Mercuries, which are generally a looking glass sort of an aircraft of the United States Navy, which helps them to be able to communicate with nuclear submarines and other vessels at sea. We were able to see that 6 E-6 Mercuries took off and were conducting flights over the United States over the course of the day. Although we're believing that this is a very huge exercise, it appears that this still, at least from what we can understand at the moment, seems to be some sort of a military exercise and not a significant air operation that is leading to an increase of naval activities. Outside of that, we also were able to hear that the Norwegians are the first to have arrested anyone inside of Europe that has been operating drones over restricted airspace, arresting several people who were involved in flying a drone over the airport near to the city of Solvær. It appears that all 8 people who have been arrested connected to the illegal drone flight are all Chinese nationals, which is making this situation a lot more complex than we originally anticipated. We have also heard that German authorities have spoke on the drone incursions that happened in Schleswig-Holstein about several days ago, stating that the drone incursion was far worse than they originally anticipated, and actually appears that actual drone swarms entered the airspace of Schleswig-Holstein and then exited the airspace several hours later. The Republic of Poland has also seen that a Dutch F-35 flying through its airspace is actually sporting a kill marking of a Shahed 136, the first aircraft kill by the Dutch on a Russian drone. We have also seen that Poland scrambled jets earlier in the day while a Russian drone attack was ongoing against the state of Ukraine, and 30 combat aircraft were airborne over the course of the day from the entirety of the NATO alliance, helping to bolster our air defense on the eastern bulwark. The armed forces of Ukraine have conducted significant casualties onto the Russian armed forces today, and the Russian Federation has had 40% of all refining capacity knocked out at this moment, and are actually officially at this moment importing fuel in the form of refined fuel products from the People's Republic of China in the limited numbers that will be available for a limited amount of time. We have an unbelievably massive amount of news today, and this isn't even covering all of the big stories that we have. Those are just the biggest ones that we could get out, at least in just the first couple of minutes of the show. We have even other major stories outside of that, and minor stories to cover throughout the entirety of the world over the past 24 hours. And I gotta be honest with y'all, this day is an absolutely nuts day. We've been saying that a lot over the past few weeks, but there have not really been this sort of high-intensity news days back-to-back, one after the other, normally in our coverage of the news in history, at least over about the 4 years that we've been doing this so far. We are going to be making sure to get y'all into each and every single piece of detail that we have from this news over the past 24 hours, and of course we'll be starting with the largest stories first, and then working our way on down into the smaller stories through the course of the night. Moving our way on into Ukraine, to our largest story of the day, we have been able to hear that the situation at the Zaporizhzhia Nuclear Powerplant, also known as the ZNPP for short by a great deal of people, is actually a lot worse than we were originally anticipating. Many people did hear about this story reported on the channel many days ago. As a matter of fact, according to our markers, the first time we touched on this story was on Saturday, after we heard that the generators at the power plant had been on for nearly 3 to 4 days, and that was about 3 or 4 days after the power plant was disconnected from the main power grid. This is an incredibly important occurrence or event at the Zaporizhzhia Nuclear Power Plant, as nuclear power plants must be connected to the external grid so that way they can maintain their coolant pumps in keep them running, flowing water through the core, so that way they do not have a nuclear meltdown. This is something that every single nuclear power plant is supposed to have, and loads of nuclear power plants, including the ZMPP, are generally designed with double and triple redundancies, with multiple high voltage power lines traveling to and from the power plant, not only to allow for a greater deal of electricity dispersion onto the grid from the operating nuclear power plant, but in the advent that the nuclear power plant also goes offline, these high voltage power grids can then supply electricity to the plant to keep these coolant pumps running. Since Saturday, we were able to hear a further development yesterday from the president of Ukraine, Volodymyr Zelensky, stating that there is an ongoing state of emergency at the Zaporizhzhia Nuclear Power Plant, and that the Russian Federation is deliberately mismanaging the power plant and causing what will become a nuclear disaster. And Zelensky, according to his statements yesterday, stated that there was most likely about a week or 2 weeks left before the power plant went into some form of a meltdown due to the lack of coolant through the cores. We have now been able to hear, as of today, the situation is even worse than Zelensky anticipated. According to the IAEA, Ukraine's Zaporizhzhia Nuclear Power Plant is facing a meltdown risk within mere days. And further information that we were able to hear from the International Atomic Energy Agency was as follows. According to what we have been able to hear, they warn that in case of a complete shutdown of backup systems, there could be a risk of nuclear fuel meltdown within the cores. Yesterday, Zelensky spoke about the critical situation at the plant, and according to him, repairs to the power lines are impossible due to constant shelling, and one of the generators has already failed. The station has been fully disconnected from external power for a week and is running only on backup diesel generators. If the blackout continues, the fuel in those generators will last only 10 days. The IAEA has now stated, adding to Zelensky's claim, that the fuel inside of the emergency generators will not last that long and may only last less than a week from this point, or up to 4 days. That was the rough estimate that seems to have been given by the International Agency of Atomic Energy earlier today. This is a situation that is incredibly difficult. And to quickly explain to y'all what is going on here, we've been explaining this pretty much every day that this has been going on, but for all those viewers who may be new and joining us tonight, it is a very important thing to discuss what the actual situation in the Zaporizhzhia Nuclear Power Plant is, at least from what we understand here in the public, and also from what we understand from all of the research that we have here on the channel. The Zaporizhzhia Nuclear Power Plant has technically been shut down and is in a state of, I guess you could say, cool reactors, if you want to call them that, for pretty much the past 3.5 years. Since the Russians occupied the power plant was actually scrammed and shut down back then, and has been in a state of cool storage for the larger part since then. This means that the reactors have not been producing any form of electricity and not conducting any sort of contribution to the greater power grid. The power plant has been operated since the Russian occupation by the Russian company Rosatom, which is a state-controlled agency within the Russian Federation that manages all Russian nuclear power plants, also including the Zaporizhzhia Nuclear Power Plant inside of occupied Ukraine. This power plant has been the point of controversy for years, as multiple statements by the IAEA has suggested that the Russian Federation is mismanaging the power plant, and the state of Ukraine has also stated that they do not like the idea of one of their very own nuclear power plants being in the hands and control of a completely different foreign country. Now, as of today, this power plant is seeing that there is no power for the coolant pumps to keep pumping water through the core. To explain in the most simple form, and this is the only way that I would know to explain it because this is how much I know about the situation, to explain it in the best way that we can, while the reactors are technically shut down, nuclear reactors do not operate like other engines. If you turn off a diesel engine, it is off. It's still hot, but it'll cool down a little bit. It's completely off and there's nothing going on there. If you turn off a gasoline-powered internal combustion engine, it's off. There's nothing that you have to do beyond that point. If you turn on a microwave and then turn it off, it turns on and off. A nuclear power plant and nuclear reactors do not operate under a similar set of parameters. Nuclear power plants like these, while technically offline, still require a decent amount of babying and maintenance, and that is one of the big things that the coolant pumps are involved in. even though these reactors are shut down technically and they're not creating power, they still are generating heat. And if y'all don't know how a nuclear reactor works basically, in a sense, by using uranium or any sort of fuel source, radioactive fuel rods, in a sense, that emit neutrons through the water. Those neutrons collide into each other and they create heat through that process. And that heat boils the water into steam. That steam is then transferred into turbines. You can actually see right here on the Zaporizhzhia Nuclear Power Plant, this is a reactor, this square building at the front with that round dome on the top of it. This larger building behind it is actually, from what we know, the turbine hall, where the steam from the power plant, or more so the reactor, goes into the turbine. That spins the turbine and produces steam. While the reactor is offline and they're not running the turbine, the reactor is still producing heat, and that means that it's boiling off water. That also means that water has to continuously be pumped in and out of the reactor, replacing the hot water with cool water, so that way it ends up not overheating and going into a meltdown. A meltdown is when the inside of the reactor gets too hot, either due to a lack of water or the water being vaporized into steam, that it pretty much starts to lead to the temperatures getting so hot that the fuel rods and the controller rods will all melt, pull at the bottom of the reactor core, and then pretty much just melt right through the bottom. That's generally what would happen. Although at 3 Mile Island there was a partial meltdown and everything just pulled at the bottom of the reactor core but didn't melt on through. That's generally what a nuclear meltdown is. And right now, from what we're hearing, there is a very high chance of a meltdown within the next few days if the Russians do not reconnect this power plant to the grid. The emergency generators that are keeping the water pumping through so that way the reactor doesn't overheat only have, according to the IAEA, maybe about 7 to 4 days left before they completely run out of any sort of fuel or any ability to keep running. These generators only have a certain period of time that they can run efficiently, and then they can also be subject to breakdowns as well, where they just shut off due to overheating or being overworked. This means that if the Russians do not connect this power plant, and we have not heard of any attempts by the Russians to reconnect the power plant to the greater grid, within the next 4 to 7 days, this nuclear reactor, or nuclear reactors for that matter, all 6 of them, could start to go into nuclear meltdowns. These might be to the equivalent of a 3 Mile Island sort of a nuclear meltdown, if you all know about that situation, or it could be similar to the Fukushima Daiichi meltdown that was seen inside of Japan in 2011. Either way, the situation is somewhat serious, and it's one that is causing a great deal of alarm, not only within the state of Ukraine, but also inside the IAEA, and their word is largely law when it comes to anything that deals with nuclear developments or technologies, whether they be for peaceful energy production purposes or for the purposes of war. A lot of people have been talking about this development in the chat, and Matthew, what are people thinking about this, and what are you thinking about it as well?
All right, so many people are commenting on the situation, and this has been happening since September 23rd. The power has been out at this plant, so it's been going on for a minute, actually, and we're hearing about more of it today. So, nuclear experts are claiming that the Zaporizhzhia nuclear plant faces a meltdown risk within days, and what are your thoughts about that? And about 50% said this will likely become a disaster, while 24% said the crisis will likely be averted soon, and 18% said it seems like a 50-50 chance of either a crisis being averted or maybe this becoming a very large disaster. Also, by the way, I do want to clarify something real quick. The IAEA, the International Atomic Energy Agency, which is the UN nuclear watchdog, they currently state there is no immediate danger as long as the diesel generators remain in operation and as long as they keep providing emergency power for the facility. So right now, no immediate danger, but that's only in the immediate sense. Where, of course, we do know that there's only about 20 days of emergency fuel for these generators, and we're on, I believe, it's the 6th or 7th day, I believe, right now. I really can't keep it straight at this point, but we're getting pretty far deep into the crisis. So if the generators run out of fuel, now common sense tells you if they run out of fuel, obviously the water pumps are not going to be running, and that means the nuclear fuel can't be cooled down, and that leads to a partial nuclear meltdown potentially over the course of weeks. So I have not heard any good signs right now about the power stations being repaired that connect to this facility. I've heard rumors that the Russians are unable to connect it, and there's currently no signs of them connecting it to the plant. So I think Ukraine and Russia are trying to work on fixing those, but right now I've not heard of any good progress on it. So basically the only thing they're left with right now, if that is indeed the case, is the Russians had to bring in more diesel for the generators with their trucks or some other method if they can find a way to do it. And if they don't bring in more fuel, that means the pumps are going to stop and we're in very big trouble at that point. So I'm going to say it seems like a 50-50 chance. I'm with the 19%. It seems like maybe the crisis might be averted, but it's so precarious right now. This is literally the longest time this facility has been out of power, and this is the closest it's come so far to a nuclear issue. So it's really hard to tell. But Enforcer, what say you?
It's a pretty difficult situation, and I would have to be with the 49%. I believe this may end up becoming a disaster. The president of Ukraine seems to be stating that this is a very strenuous situation that's being seen at the power plant. The IAEA is also showing a great deal of concern as well, at least currently, about what is going on at the power plant, as they are saying that some sort of a situation could start to develop where a meltdown may occur. There is a risk of a nuclear fuel meltdown that is going on at the power plant right now due to it not being connected to the grid and running on backup generators. And so generally, considering that we have not heard of the Russians connecting the power plant back to the grid, and there is no proof that we can point to or that I found today that shows that they are trying to reconnect it to the grid, this is pretty much a ticking time bomb that is counting down right now to some sort of a disaster unless if something changes. And the only thing that really can change, folks, is that the Russians managed to reconnect the power plant to the grid. It's an incredibly simple undertaking. I cannot kid on that. The Ukrainians ended up reconnecting the Chernobyl nuclear power plant to the grid literally within the same day that was hit today. We're about to get to that here in a second. But they were able to reconnect their power plant back to the grid in the Chernobyl exclusion zone to keep the containment zone working around the reactor. This is something that easily would be done, but according to Zelensky, he has stated that the reason why the Russians are not conducting this action is because the Russian army is pretty much shelling the entire surrounding area around the power plant, and for that reason, there's no way for anyone to get there on the ground and just simply reconnect the power plant to the greater grid. Also, I have to add in that Russian incompetence, at least when it comes to operating this power plant, is nothing new. And many of y'all will know, as I zoomed out here on the satellite, of one of the significant sorts of developments that happened that caused a great deal of alarm around the world when it occurred, which was the 2023 Novokakhovka Dam explosion. A lot of y'all will remember that the Novokakhovka Dam explosion was one of the largest ecological acts of terrorism that we have seen in the modern world. To put it shortly, the Russians mined and detonated the Novokakhovka Dam at the south of the Novokakhovka Reservoir, named after the city of Novokakhovka, which is where the dam is at, leading to the entire reservoir filtering out and into the greater Black Sea. This resulted in significant flooding inside the city of Kherson, and especially on the southern bank, ironically, where there were a great deal of Russians, ending up killing a good amount of the Russian army in that area. More importantly, however, this deprived the Zaporizhzhia Nuclear Power Plant of the water reservoir, which you can actually still see right here, at least on the close-in zoom-up of the old reservoir, meaning that the Zaporizhzhia Nuclear Power Plant only had the water that was left inside of its cooling ponds and also from groundwater reservoirs. That was incredibly concerning at the time. Nobody knew how much water was in the groundwater reservoirs and whether the power plant would be able to operate sufficiently without a large pool of water from the reservoir to be able to draw access to. But it does appear that that situation has largely been averted, but the Russians, since 2023, have been running the entire power plant and its water supply from the ground-based aquifers and the wells that are based at the campus of the nuclear power plant, which also was a huge situation in itself. We are now seeing that they've created another major situation by simply having the thing blasted off of the greater power grid. And so now we're waiting to see, will the Russians fix this situation at the 13th hour, or will they not fix this situation and there could start to be meltdowns inside the reactors? Really quickly, I also want to put this out there. A meltdown does not mean that we're going into a Chernobyl-like situation every single time. For example, the reason why the Chernobyl nuclear power plant, or reactor number 4 at the Chernobyl nuclear power plant, exploded with such a great deal of force is because it was under normal operating parameters. Actually, it's a very difficult sort of an explanation, but it generally was under normal operating parameters when it happened with a large amount of water that was inside of the core, which rapidly pretty much flash vaporized into steam, which is what led to the major explosion at reactor number 4 at Chernobyl and the massive flood of radiation that hit that region of Europe just around the area of the exclusion zone. Such a thing may not happen at the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant. It would be a significant radiological disaster if it does occur, but it will probably be something closer to the lines of Fukushima or 3 Mile Island if something like this does end up happening. It's not going to be extreme. There will still be radioactive contamination around the surrounding area, and it will require a significant cleanup operation to be conducted, but it wouldn't be something that is world-ending or ending, at least for Europe as far as they are concerned. It's a serious situation, but I also want to, of course, downplay it a little bit. It's not so serious that everyone in Europe is going to get poisoned and die from radiation from this thing, at least from what we know right now. But also, that's just generally based off of what we've been hearing from people who were involved in the situation earlier today and what they've been stating to the public. Still, moving on out of that and out of the Zaporizhzhia Nuclear Power Plant, there was another similar such situation that has happened on the northern side of the country at a power plant that I just mentioned a second ago that is world famous, the Chernobyl Nuclear Power Plant. The Chernobyl nuclear power plant is actually a good bit different than the one down in Zaporizhzhia. The Chernobyl nuclear power plant used the infamous RBMK reactors, which are graphite reactors, and a little bit different than the light pressurized water reactors that you see down at Zaporizhzhia. Nevertheless, this is where the worst radiological disaster ever occurred in human history so far. In 1986, due to the incompetence and negligence of the power plant operators, they resulted in a significant explosion of the vaporized steam within Chernobyl reactor number 4, which led to the entire area becoming irradiated. You can actually see, at least over here, a little bit of what's left of the Red Forest. Funnily enough, folks, just to share this with you all, the Red Forest has really not existed ever, and it's a bit of a modern-day myth. The Red Forest did exist when the reactor melted down originally, and the trees were killed in this area, pretty much leaving the leaves as a brighter red color, and all the trees were quite literally dead. But right after that, liquidators within the first few months of the meltdown actually cut down all of the trees and then buried them under several feet of topsoil. So the Red Forest has quite literally never existed since the months after the Chernobyl meltdown in 1986, but still permeates the public mindset on nuclear meltdowns and nuclear disasters to this day, although it's been gone for decades. Still, the Russians apparently tried to recreate the Red Forest, at least earlier today, through their own means. This was the situation that we had heard of earlier in the day. According to some developments and information that we had, Chernobyl's Reactor 4 had actually been in an emergency situation that had been declared by the Ukrainian Energy Ministry at the Chernobyl nuclear power plant in the Kiev Oblast of northern Ukraine, after shelling today by Russian forces damaged energy infrastructure in the city of Slavotich, cutting power to the new safe confinement which houses Reactor 4, the reactor that was the cause of and also was destroyed by the Chernobyl disaster in 1986. To let y'all know what the new safe containment is, it's that giant looking thing that you see right there. This is actually a picture of it, funnily enough, that came from before the new safe containment was moved over the old sarcophagus. You can actually see the old sarcophagus right there. That was the one built by the liquidators in 1986, and this was the new one that the Ukrainians put on top of the old sarcophagus of about, I think, around 2017. The Russians ended up hitting a power line that actually fed power to the new safe containment structure, which helps to contain the radioactivity that's starting to leak out of the old sarcophagus, and also there is a large automated crane at the very top of the dome of the new safe containment that some Ukrainian liquidators use to slowly take apart the old sarcophagus, considering that it's starting to collapse in on itself. And also, eventually, the plan is that they're actually going to start pulling out chunks of the melted out core, pretty much the corium if they can, and find some way to safely dispose of it, pretty much trying to reclaim the power plant and the surrounding area. The power was completely knocked out to this thing today because of the Russians' artillery shelling at Slavotich, and from what we understand, the Ukrainians were able to reconnect the power supply to the new safe containment structure within several hours. Around 4 hours later, the power was restored, and Zelensky did state that a crisis had been averted inside the area. But it is one that is starting to lead a lot of people to have a great deal of suspicion, especially about what's going on at the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant, and the fact that the Russians just happened by coincidence to shell a specific power line in a specific town that specifically goes straight to the new safe containment structure in Chernobyl. And Matthew, what are people thinking about that? And what are you thinking about that as well?
All right. So it certainly seems like a really, really odd coincidence that it just happens to be, like the enforcer said, that the Zaporizhzhia plant is having a major nuclear crisis, and now Chernobyl today had a brief nuclear crisis of its own accord, and it seems to be the Ukrainians got that fixed very quickly. So the big question is, was the Chernobyl incident, was that intentional by the Russian forces? And it looks like 71% said yes, Russia probably knew the result of hitting and shelling that area, while 11% said it's a 50-50 chance right now, and 10% said no, it seems like a really bad coincidence, and the Russians probably didn't know. So I would say personally, based on what I've heard so far, I would also say that Russia might actually not have known what they were doing with this one. Now, obviously, it comes at a very bad time with the Zaporizhzhia situation happening, but I'm not sure if Russia knew exactly what they were doing, because I heard Zelensky say that the Russians really couldn't have known what they were going to hit with that, because of course they hit a power line that led to Chernobyl, but it wasn't directly connected to Chernobyl. So they may not have known that striking that certain area would have led to a power outage there. But with the Russians, you never really can tell. Like usually you'd give people the benefit of the doubt on something like this and say, oh, they might not have done it on purpose. It's a 50-50 chance. Well, with the Russians, they don't really have good faith when it comes to stuff like this. So it's kind of hard to tell. That's why I'm with the 50-50. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would have to say that I would be with the 71%. They probably did know of the result, because we have seen in the past that the Russians have directly hit the new safe containment structure with a Shahed 136. We've also seen that in the past they have attempted to use the Chernobyl exclusion zone as a defensive site, digging inside of it. That generally was due to the incompetence of the Russian units that were within the area. And we have seen multiple actions by the Russian Federation that have surrounded, at least in a light sense, the ongoing developments in the Chernobyl exclusion zone and also the radioactivity that still lies within reactor number 4. So I generally would say they probably did know the result. There isn't really a great deal of power lines within this area that travel to the Chernobyl exclusion zone or to the safe containment, and so I would generally say they probably did know about that, and they conducted that attack deliberately. It seems a little bit odd that in the midst of the ongoing situation at Zaporizhzhia, which the Russians do not appear to be fixing, they also would end up trying to hit somewhere around the Chernobyl nuclear power plant and knock out the power lines heading to the new safe containment. It seems a little bit too coincidental to really be overlooked, at least to me, so I'd have to agree with the 70%. They probably did know what the outcoming results were going to be from that sort of a development. While at the same time all that's been going on, we did get a statement from Peskov the Rat today on the situation at Zaporizhzhia, and this was his statement in his actual words. I'm going to mute it and just read the subtitles for y'all so that way the folks who aren't seeing the screen can hear exactly what Peskov said. This is a Russian situation. The Russian side ensures security at the station. At the same time, it is also well known and no secret that the station and its surrounding infrastructure are under constant attack from the Kyiv regime. Well, as you understand, it is least to say foolish to accuse the Russian side of bombing a station that it controls itself. Despite this, Russian specialists and station employees are doing everything possible to ensure the safety of the station. It is provided reliably at different times, and the Russian side, as you know, is in constant contact with the MAGATE, and in accordance with accepted norms and rules, informs MAGATE about the situation at the station. That was according to Dmitry Peskov in the statements that he made today. I would highly...
Also, isn't it kind of odd that he talks about safety at these plants? Like, for example, Zaporizhzhia has been the source of many criticisms, like over the years. Like, the Russians have been storing their military equipment in there before. They've also stored live munitions, literally in one of the reactor halls. We saw pictures of that a short while back. And also, they literally set tires on fire underneath one of the cooling towers, and it caused a humongous nuclear scare. And people were watching that on live cameras and saying, "What the hell is going on?" There's literally like a reactor tower on fire out here, but it turns out they were burning some type of tires under it or something. So safety is definitely not the priority. Rat is very much lying about that.
I'd also like to remind you all of the one time that the Russians actually did bombard the IAEA with their own MLRS. If you all do not recall, I will remind you all, because this was there's so much to think about and so much to remember, folks. If you don't remember this one, I would completely understand, because it was a small one, and it was one that came by in passing, but if you remember it, it's quite clear that it did happen. Don't y'all remember that one time that the IAEA official showed up just hours after the Russians had bombarded the plant with their own MLRSs? and one rocket ended up not exploding, and it was somewhere out here on this main security road, right around here. If you remember this, Matthew, I'm sure you will. The Russians walked up the IAEA inspectors to the rocket that was still literally sticking up out of the street, pointing from a direction that was clearly fired from the south, and the rocket was traveling north when it landed. And they said, "You see, the Kiev regime, they fired the rocket, and it flew over the power plant, and then it did a 180 and came flying in from the other direction, and then slammed down this way. That's why it looks like this." If you don't recall that,
Oh.
remember that?
Yeah, I remember that, but I can one up that even. You remember we were getting reports, I think it was like 7 or 8 months ago, that the Russians had allegedly mined the entire Zaporizhzhia plant. We had heard reports that were pretty credible that they had put mines around this place and rigged it to blow if the Ukrainians tried to take it. And that was a pretty decent, credible report back then. I'm not sure if we ever got picture evidence of it, but we had heard that. So, I mean, the Russians definitely are not what you'd call safety conscious when it comes to this place. And in fact, it seems like they have no conscious ability whatsoever to actually maintain this place properly or adhere to any safety standards. They're reckless at this place, and it's been shown over the course of a year or more.
And there's a picture, by the way, just to remind you all, of the cooling tower fire that the Russians conducted with the old tires to try and scare people into thinking that there was some sort of a disaster at the power plant. Just to remind you all, that is something that they did do, and it actually was believed, because if y'all also don't know this, these cooling towers are lined on the inside with wooden panels, which help out with the water cooling. That's what these are for. It's to cool the water. They also believe at this point that that cooling tower has suffered irreparable damage, and a lot of the wooden tiles inside have burned, and that the structure, due to the heat caused by the fire, may have also been damaged extremely as well. It would most likely have to be demolished and rebuilt once the Ukrainians start to operate the power plant at full operational capacity again, if that ever happens at all. So, once again, to remind you all, the Russians are not number one with safety at the Zaporizhzhia Nuclear Power Plant, and their statements largely should be chalked up to nothing at all, like the rats today, because it means quite literally nothing. They say, "We wouldn't bombard the plant because it's our plant." Well, they did it before. We clearly have proof of it because of the incoming trajectory of the unguided rocket that slammed into the street there and was literally sticking with half of it up out of the street and was clearly coming from the south heading towards the plant. That was from the Russian direction. We also know that they burned a whole bunch of tires inside of one of these cooling towers, which clearly is not safe by any measure. It's conducting a large uncontrolled fire in a cooling tower. And then we also know that they have kept, at a minimum, only one high voltage line operational through most of the wards of the plant, which is why we're hearing of this emergency situation right now, is because no other second or third high voltage line has been connected to the power plant for years. And not only that, IAEA officials have confirmed that they've been storing military vehicles inside of the turbine halls. They have been using this area largely as a military base, both by the Ukrainian claims and the IAEA's claims. And not only that, Ukrainian special forces have made the claim that the entire area is surrounded by anti-personnel and anti-vehicular mines around the entirety of the compound. Clearly all not safe operations of a nuclear power plant. And there is a decent amount of endless statements by the special forces of Ukraine, the state of Ukraine, and the IAEA that all point towards this power plant is being run wildly and dangerously, with pretty much any disregard to any safety protocols, and running the thing like it's the Wild West out here. But moving on out of the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant, and also from the Chernobyl situation, and on into our next major piece of the news for the day, it appears that the French have had a little bit of a change overnight. Not really a big one. They're just getting back to what they've been doing for years. But according to the French, things are getting pretty heated, and we have been able to hear that according to the Chief of Staff of the French Army, General Pierre Schill, which you can see right here, he has stated that the forces must be ready as early as tonight for high-intensity warfare, meaning that the French military, according to the Chief of Staff of France, must be in a constant state of readiness for war to break out literally within hours. Literally right now. That's what he has stated as of today. I've got to say that that is a pretty wild statement to hear. And we have heard statements like that from time to time as recommendations, but we've never heard them as an actual operational policy of any armed force in Europe outside of Poland's due to the recent drone incursions. This is the second military in all of Europe that is now going out of their way to openly say we are upping our force preparedness to the maximum, to where we are at a constant state of readiness and ready to respond at any given moment to an outbreak of war inside of Europe. I gotta be honest with y'all, the French, they do not play. And we also were able to hear additional statements that apparently, according to Macron, Macron says that nothing is ruled out if a Russian plane violates NATO airspace again. So it seems that the French are really gearing up to get going at this thing. And I also have to say that the French are quite an interesting country and actually a little bit understated, at least in the modern day. A lot of people joke about the French because of the Second World War surrendering a great deal. But if y'all do not know, at least historically, the Republic of France, or any state that it has had the name of France in it, has won more battles than any other nation on the planet, at least in singular battles won. The French have also won a massive amount of wars. It's just that they happen to not win the Second World War, and a lot of people dig into them for that. But nevertheless, the French army is actually quite significant and sizable, and I'll have to show y'all here really quickly the French army and at least its organizational structure, so that way you can get an idea of how big it is, or at least I can hopefully show y'all that here, because usually they would have the structure of the French army somewhere on here. And let me see if I can find a structure of the French army. This is the whole French army right here. This is the entire thing. I haven't been able to put this onto my force disposition map yet. This thing has been put on a hold for a little bit because it's gotten pretty hectic in the background, and we're trying to deal with a whole bunch of things, including the preparations to move to Enforcer HQ 3.0. And so this thing has unfortunately been put on hold, and also the Russians and their stupidity and their confusion have messed with me so much, I had to give up on doing the Russians, at least for now. But nevertheless, the French army is a quite significant fighting force. And just speaking of their fighting divisions, the 1st Division and the 3rd Division are incredibly well equipped, each division having one full armor brigade, a mechanized brigade, and also the 1st Division has a mountain infantry brigade, as well as the 3rd Division having an airborne or a parachutist brigade. We also see that on top of that, the French have a great deal of support forces, including those that are involved in cyber operations, signals intelligence, artillery, rotary aviation, combat brigades, so maintenance and sustainment brigades, so on and so forth. The French actually do have a pretty decent military, to be entirely honest with y'all, and so it is something interesting to note that pretty much one of the second largest ground armies in Europe, second to the Poles only, is starting to say that they are now going to be at a constant state of readiness for the complete outbreak of war. This is coming after they've already prepared their military hospitals for a mass casualty event, and we've also seen that the French have started to heavily invest in building up their military to an even larger scale than we are seeing currently. And so, with that in mind, folks, what are y'all thinking about the statements made by the French General Staff or Chief of Staff today, and what are you thinking about it as well, Matthew?
All right, so it looks like about 72% of the audience said it sounds like a real warning, while 14% said it sounds like more fear mongering, and 10% said it's too early to tell. So that's a pretty bold statement that France made today. The military commander said that they must be ready as early as tonight for warfare with Russia. I think it was a euphemism, I believe. I don't think he actually meant like they're ready to go to war, like literally tonight. I think he meant like they need to be ready tonight to go to war because that's how serious the situation really is. So I believe that is the case, but we'll have to wait and see what exactly they mean by that. But certainly a very, very big announcement right there. And of course, France, they're a little bit on the fence. I'm not going to lie. They're a little bit on the fence right now because France had previously said that they're really not sure about liquidating Russian assets. And then the next day they turn around and say they're ready for war with Russia. So not really sure where they really stand. But to me, it does sound like a real warning. I'm with the 72%. And Enforcer, what say you?
I would have to be with the 72%. I would believe that the French are starting to get ready. Also, by the way, Matthew, I don't know if your microphone sensitivity is up, but I can hear like your keyboard and cups clanking and all that, like in the middle
Yeah, I
of
got to
everything.
get to that in a second.
But beyond that, I would have to say that I'm with the 72%. I would believe that this is a serious warning by the French, and I think that the French are once again starting to get a little bit more aggressive, because to be entirely honest with y'all, at least from what I've been seeing with their foreign policy, they are as aggressive as they believe they are allowed to be aggressive. If they think that the United States is pulling back and getting hesitant, the French pull back a little bit, and they also get a little bit hesitant, probably because they're starting to see that the alliance may not be as solid as it can be. Other times we've seen that in the midst of the prior administration and also right now during the current one, when both administrations are starting to get a little bit more aggressive against the Russians, the French start to get more aggressive as well. So I'd actually believe that because of the change in the United States of America on the position against the Russian Federation, the French are starting to get more aggressive as a result, and are once again starting to position themselves as something of a larger defender of Europe, or at least a perceived one by most of the European Union and the European portion of the North Atlantic Treaty Organization. So I would generally have to be with the 70%. I think this might be a legitimate warning by the French Republic about further actions or incursions by the Russian Air Force or Russian aircraft into NATO airspaces. And they also did not leave that alone as a warning today. As many of you all will know, yesterday we were able to hear that the French Republic had started to move in and start to seize a shadow tanker within the area of Saint-Nazaire. This shadow tanker is the Boracay, and we were able to confirm today that French forces are on board the vessel and are walking around the bridge. We can see them there wearing their little headscarves, I believe those would be. I'm not really sure what the hell those are. It's almost like a balaclava, but only like the lower half. But we can see them wandering around after the ship has been seized. And also, Matthew, it does seem that it is fixed. I can't hear it anymore. And also, you know something, Matthew, I just noticed? Look it up there at the sign that says Boracay. Do you see that?
Yeah, I see it.
There's a little bit of something. I can't tell what it is, though. It's like these letters that are behind it that were painted over that were white. And Matthew, what in the hell do you think those letters are? Like, what alphabet do you think that is? Do you think that's the Latin alphabet? The Cyrillic alphabet? Mandarin, maybe? What do you think it is?
Honestly, I have no idea. I really can't see it that well. I just see big old, like, words of Boracay on the front.
It's Cyrillic. It's Russian.
Oh, I see.
So they painted over. I'm not even kidding, folks. This is absolutely crazy. Whoever owns this ship, which I forgot what the exact company is that owns the ship, but y'all can see it if you look in really close right here. Whoever owns this ship, it originally had a Slavic name. It had a name in Cyrillic. So what they did is that they just painted over that in white. You can still see the imprint of it back there on the name board. And then they just took a stencil and some black spray paint and spray painted Boracay on the sign instead. It's literally like a Lord of War move. Like, if y'all ever saw the movie Lord of War, y'all know that the guy who was supposed to be Victor Bout, the Merchant of Death, who was, Nicolas Cage in that movie, he actually saw that the Interpol, or whoever it was, the people who were coming after him in the movie, were coming towards the ship, and he had some people go down on the side and repaint the name and fly a different flag. That's almost exactly what's been done with this ship. I mean, it's such a cheap job. You can literally see it in the picture. I'm not even kidding. It's literally a Lord of War move that they tried to pull off right here with this ship, but it doesn't really appear to have gone too well because the French have seized the vessel, and the ship is suspected of having launched the drones that shut down the Copenhagen airport a week ago. Once again, that's alleged. We're not entirely sure if this is the one, but it was seized off of the suspicion, and also due to the suspicious actions that it did yesterday, which were wildly odd, especially in the maritime world. And if Walter A. Lakota is here with us tonight, I have a feeling he'll probably be able to confirm this. But according to the reason why the French have seized the vessel, the crew failed to prove the ship's nationality and refused to comply with orders. The vessel also apparently did not show a national flag, at least on one prior instance, because it was detained in Estonia for sailing without a flag. If y'all know anything about maritime law, flying a flag of a nation is incredibly important. It's extremely important. You have to fly the flag of some country from somewhere. And the fact that they weren't flying any was incredibly suspicious. Now they are not trying to prove the ship's nationality and were refusing to comply with the orders of the French Navy, the French Marine as it's called, or the French Marines, which are, the Marine Corps of France. And so they have now boarded the vessel and have seized it as of yesterday, and we also saw pictures confirming that as of today. A very interesting sort of an occurrence. Moving on from that, though, we've got to drop a bombshell on y'all today that came out of Washington, D.C., because this is one that has never been done before. Never been done before. There's actually a lot of things that are a little bit interesting in the U.S. today, but let me move y'all into Washington and give y'all this big story. Y'all gotta sit down, call your kids, call your family around. This is actually one that's legitimately crazy. We have never seen something like this done before in the war in Ukraine. It's a huge move in support of Ukraine, and it's one that we have to make sure we hype up a lot. It was actually a big one today. This is what we have been able to hear. And I'll read it off the first time, and then we'll go to the second post. The United States will provide Ukraine with intelligence for missile strikes deep inside of Russia, according to the Wall Street Journal report from today. We have been able to hear that there is confirmation of that because, in further detail, the United States will provide the Ukrainian armed forces with intelligence for long-range missile strikes against energy infrastructure inside of Russia. An order instructing both the Pentagon and intelligence agencies to aid Ukraine with strikes against targets within Russian territory was recently signed by the president, with U.S. officials asking NATO allies to provide similar support to the Ukrainians. In addition, the U.S. is also weighing the delivery of the Tomahawk and Barracuda cruise missiles, as well as other American-made ground and air-launched missiles that have ranges of around 500 miles to Ukraine, allowing them to potentially strike targets in Russia that are as deep as Moscow or even further. This is a big change, a massive one, as a matter of fact. This is probably the biggest change that we've seen in foreign policy so far. Because back in the day, we did provide in the prior administration intelligence to the Ukrainians about Russian forces inside of Ukraine, but we rarely ever provided them with any data or information about anything inside of Russia. This is the first time ever in the whole war that the United States will be providing satellite intelligence and further intelligence of our own to the state of Ukraine to help them conduct even farther, much more efficient attacks inside of the Russian Federation on any targets of their choosing. And from what we know, there is no limits at the moment on what the United States said is off the table. From what we know, every single target is on the table for the Ukrainians to hit, which is a significant sort of a move.
Well, I think they were generally the general intent behind it, based on the story that came out, was that they were giving this targeting data to the Ukrainian government, so that way they can target just the oil refineries and also the fuel targets inside of mainland Russia. I don't think they're giving a wide berth. I mean, according to the statements we heard the other day from other U.S. officials, it sounds like what Ukraine does every time they want to strike into mainland Russia using a U.S.-made weapon is they go to the Pentagon officials. They say, "Hey, look, here's our plan to strike into Russia. Would you give us permission to use your weapon to strike into mainland Russia?" The Pentagon will look at it, they'll say either yes or no, and then the Ukrainians will carry it out to get the permission. So I think, generally speaking, it's generally for the fuel targets. That seems to be what the United States is really focused on right now, but it could be expanding to other targets. But for now, I think it's just fuel.
I would have to say I would doubt that it is just fuel, because we have seen that in the past the Ukrainians have easily hit, even up till this week, literally today, refineries on their own, well inside of Russia, 800 and 900 miles in. The United States would be doing nothing if they're just saying, okay, you can hit refineries with our stuff, maybe 500 miles in or so. Like that would be doing nothing, because the Ukrainians have already pretty much wiped out every refinery that's within 500 miles of Ukraine that is in Russia. And we're about to get to that news later on tonight. So I would kind of doubt that that would be the only thing that the Ukrainians are allowed, because I would have a feeling that there would be a lot more sensitive targets on the menu. Because what would be the point of providing them with intelligence and going, that's a refinery, like for sure, on God, when you can literally look at one on, Google Maps. Like you can go to Ryazan right here and see a RNPK refinery, and the Ukrainians on their own can just go on Google Maps and go, okay, that's a target, we'll hit that, and then fly a drone right to it. Like the United States doesn't even have to provide them with satellite data and intelligence for that, because they literally know where they are. It's not like they're getting up and moving, it's like they're literally just sitting there.
It could be maybe they're giving them coordinates to different fuel sites, like maybe like fuel reserve and things like that. It could be possibly that. But also at the same time, though, we're really not sure what weapons the U.S. is referring to, because they don't really specify which weapons they're providing intelligence for the Ukrainians to use. Because everybody should keep in mind, Ukraine has free reign to fire wherever they want inside of Russia using their own domestically manufactured weapons. So if Ukraine develops the Flamingo, which they just got done developing and they've started to field, they can fire that anywhere in Russia without U.S. permission. That's generally the way it works so far. But if they decide to use a U.S.-made weapon, they have to get permission. And also, now the U.S. has added another layer on top of it, that they're giving them targeting data to use that equipment. So I think it might be also indicative that they're getting some type of new long-range weapon, which is probably going to end up being the Tomahawk, is my guess. And they're going to use that targeting data for the Tomahawks. That's probably why they're doing it.
Maybe, possibly so. But also, speaking of further developments, at least inside of Europe, as a lot of people have been talking about the seizure of the Boracay today, a lot of people are wondering, what in the world is up with the seizure of the Boracay? The French have alleged that it was involved in the drone launches that were interdicting Danish airspace around Copenhagen a week ago. And what are people thinking about that, Matthew? What are you thinking about that as well?
All right. So right now we know very, very little. All we know is France boarded and raided a oil tanker near their coast and accused them of offenses. And right now we don't know what those offenses are, and it's all alleged right now. I want to make that big clear. A big allegedly out there. This is the allegations. But what are your thoughts about all of that? And it looks like 81% said Russia is likely launching drones on ships, not necessarily just that ship, but maybe different ships as well. While 6% said this is probably all overblown and it's probably a nothing burger, and 5% said drones are probably coming from elsewhere, like for example being launched from the ground or even maybe in Kaliningrad. So I would say personally, based on what we're hearing, it sounds like the NATO countries are suspecting very, very strongly that Russia is using their shadow fleet to launch these drones. The only problem is though, the only real like evidence we've gotten of that so far is we've gotten statements, and now we're seeing that France is boarding and raiding an oil tanker. That's all we have right now, and we don't have any picture or video evidence to show it or prove it. So we're still in the dark quite a bit right now, still in the dark very much. And I'm personally waiting on some more evidence to come out before I make a conclusion on it, because it could simply be that France has decided to board the vessel because they had a suspicion that maybe they're doing something else. We just don't know yet. So I'm with the 81%. It probably is coming from ships, but I want more evidence first. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would have to say that I would believe with the 81% that they're most likely coming from ships. I wouldn't know if it's the Boracay. I actually would still be under the theory that it was the Rapucha class landing ship that was sitting around in a literal epicenter from all of the drone sightings that were seen just south of the island of Finn and near to the island of Lolland, if I'm pronouncing that correctly. I would believe that it was that ship more so because once again, using a ship like the Boracay to launch your drone could lead to the ship getting seized, like we're seeing right now. And considering that the Russians need those shadow tankers to be able to try and ship their fuel out into the greater world and keep Russia financially afloat, it would be a very risky sort of a thing to launch drones from a ship like that and then see it possibly get seized. It would be a lot less risky to launch the drones from a Russian warship, because even if NATO believes that they have narrowed it down to that ship, you can't board that ship or seize it. It's an absolute declaration of war at that point if you even tried that. So I would generally have to say I would believe that the Russians are launching the drones from ships. It's just that I don't really know if there is a large credence to believe that they would be doing that from civilian tankers, which are incredibly vital to the Russian Federation's economy at this point, a lot like the Boracay. So that would be my 2 cents on it. I'm highly likely it's ships, but not really sure if it's the ones like the Boracay that are fairly significant to the Russians economically, at least. But anyways, with that, it is time for us to move on into a little bit more of the news from the United States. And we have been able to see some interesting occurrences in the skies over America today. Over the skies of America, folks, is what I'm saying. This is a rare sort of a thing that we ever talk about. 6 E-6B Sentries were airborne today. That is a lot of them. If any of y'all know, one of them going to Europe was a pretty big deal. 6 of them were airborne over the United States today. We are believing that this may be some part of a military exercise that's being conducted by the U.S. Navy for some sort of force preparedness or constant readiness. That's what we're generally believing right now, because there was no reason for all these aircraft to go airborne today, rather than probably an exercise of some sort, and they just happen to have all of them in the air at the same time. And that's generally what I would be believing about this. Fairly rare. We actually haven't seen this the entire time we've been covering the news here on this channel, but I would say that it's probably not anything that is extreme or nuts, for that matter, where it's like, the nuclear bombers are flying, we're all gonna die, the nuclear codes are being transmitted over the radios, it's gonna happen. I don't think it's that at all, but still fairly interesting sort of occurrence over the skies of the United States earlier today. On top of that, we also were able to see, and this is something that's been talked about on the channel a lot, and actually some viewers have brought up this specific system, the Leonidas, as the United States has once again tested microwave weapons against drones. And this is a similar clip that we've seen recently, but it does appear the United States is trying to bring this to the forefront of the public's attention to show that they are trying to come up with some form of drone defense systems that hopefully will be fieldable soon, although this still will take years to see it put into actual service. Still, these sorts of microwave pulses directed by the Leonidas can take down literal swarms of drones just like that. So it does appear that there is a little bit of hope, at least for the United States in terms of drone defense, but these systems ain't cheap. These systems are not cheap. They're about $15 million a piece, which is about the equivalent of a Tor M1 air defense system inside of Russia. A fairly expensive sort of a system. Just to put that into comparison, an M1 Abrams tank in the modern day costs about $5 million. So a single one of those air defense systems costs the equivalent of 3 M1 Abrams main battle tanks. It's a fairly expensive sort of a system, and we do know that it's currently in its prototype phase, but considering that the military has to approve the contract and also conduct mass production, that could take years before we see these fielded in any larger numbers. So once again, it's a great system, but it is not close enough to being put into mass service, at least at the moment, for us to be able to say that we're safe against a drone attack. So right now, until that system gets implemented, we're still generally at an impasse for the larger part at least, of the drone defense situation inside of America and across the whole of Europe where our forces are, at least at the moment. So it does appear that a lot of people have been talking about the ongoing situation at this moment, at least inside of Europe, and it does appear that a lot of people are talking about whether this is going to continue to be a proxy war or a world war. And what are people thinking about that, Matthew, and what are you thinking about that as well?
All right, so this is a very interesting question that sort of was brought up by the whole topic of the U.S. giving targeting data to Ukraine to target inside of Russia, because even though me personally, I support that action, I think it's a good move, that is still a very, very large escalatory move, because imagine if it was reversed. Imagine, let's say, if Venezuela was attacking the United States, and then all of a sudden Russia started giving targeting data to Venezuela to strike in the mainland United States. That would be viewed as a massive escalation. So while I do support the U.S. move to give that, it certainly is what I would say a proxy war to a certain extent. It's the U.S. basically striking Russia through Ukraine. So will it become a direct war soon, or will it remain limited to a proxy war? And it looks like 48% said no, it'll lead to a major direct war, while 15% said it will stay confined to proxy wars, and 31% said it'll be both proxy and hybrid, but not a direct war. So honestly, we've been in the proxy war stage for a long time. Like pretty much ever since this war got started, it was already in the proxy war stage because Ukraine has had heavy support from the West, very heavy support. And me personally, I would say that's the sole reason that Ukraine has done so well is because they've gotten equipment from the West and also training and support from the West as well. So I think it's about to move into a direct war, personally. I'm with the 48%. It's also, the hybrid warfare has also been going on the entire time as well. So neither one of the proxy war or hybrid aspects are new. That's something that's been happening for ages. So the next step is, obviously and logically, a direct war. I think Russia is reaching that point. So, Enforcer, what say you?
I would have to say that in my 2 cents, I do believe I would be with the 48%. I think this is going to end up leading to a direct war. Not that it's avoidable. I always want to say that because someone is about to say, oh my God, the president's getting us into World War III. And no, he's not. It's not happening like that at all. We were going to go into World War either way. Because if y'all don't recall, everyone was saying that Biden was going to get us into World War III. But the truth of it is that it's not really Biden or Trump or Kamala or whoever was going to be the president that was going to get us into World War III. It was the Russians that were going to get us into World War III because they're kind of forcing us to. There's really no way that we can avoid the situation. They are endlessly escalating. Someone would have had to have responded at some point, and then that's going to create a war. And if we don't respond, they're just going to keep escalating until they attack us directly anyways, and then we go to war because of that. There's no way that this could be avoided. And I think that's what a lot of people are amiss on, especially people who are incredibly deeply entrenched in domestic politics. If there is a world war to come, there is nobody on the planet, no matter how competent you think they are, that can make that not happen. Let me ask you all this. If you are in a situation where someone has been displeased with you and they whip out their firearm on you, do you think that someone in a business suit is going to get shot or not shot versus someone who's just wearing casual attire? Do you think that the other guy, because he's professionally dressed, is not going to get shot because he seems like a competent guy at the office? Or do you think that the guy who's dressed a little bit more casual, with his casual sort of a go-around or kind of a behavior, is going to avoid getting shot? The answer is neither of them will, because they don't control the other guy who's holding the firearm. That's kind of the truth of it. So it really doesn't matter who in the world's in charge in the United States, just to be completely upfront with that. It really matters who's in charge in Russia. And through every administration, it's the same guy. It's Putin. So if Putin wants to go into a world war with us, they're either just going to keep escalating and we can ignore it until they attack us and then we go to war, or we can also try and match their escalation with our own escalation for the matter of principle, and also to stand on a position of strength and not allow the degradation of our entire alliance, and then we'll go to war anyways because of that. So the honest truth with that is, I think it will lead to a major direct war, but I also think that a lack of action would also lead to a direct outbreak of war. It's a little bit shocking with that. Some people can't believe that that would be the case, because a lot of people believe, if you just voted for some magic person in America, they're going to solve the issue. And the truth of it is that none of them would have, and it would have ended up this way one way or another. It ends up with the same end result. So I would have to say that generally I would be with a 48%. But beyond that, it does appear to be a pretty wild and interesting situation inside of Europe. And oh, by the way, everyone, I have to mention while we're on the American news, there were 2 KC-46 tankers that were spotted on transponders today in the Eastern Caribbean. We do not know why they were there. They're generally refueling American aircraft in the area, but we do not know what type of aircraft, how many of them there were, and also why they were there for the larger part. So we were able to hear of that. It does appear there's some sort of continuing military presence in the area, but we haven't been able to hear of any further escalations against the Venezuelans, at least over the course of the day. And that's going to move us on back into the Middle East, because we have to get on into all the Middle Eastern news and also the little bit of East Asian news, and then the rest of everything from Europe and Ukraine. We still have a huge amount of news to go, but before we get on into that, I do want to make sure that we address a couple of questions from the chat. And Matthew, what do we got?
All right, so jumping into our first 3 super chats and getting right back to the news, our first one here is going to go to none other than Sparky107107, and thank you very much, good sir, for that $25 support. We do appreciate that very, very much. And Sparky said, the best world news and conflict channel out there, and everyone ring the bell and get all those posts from these guys. And my real world news comes from these guys, and the Enforcer likes my model trains for getting a break from world conflict.
And thank you so much for the support and helping this channel to keep on running, Sparky. It's folks like you who make this channel possible. Help us to keep this thing rolling and help us to cover the news every day. It's a statement as old as time, those phrases right there, but it's one that everyone knows and appreciates greatly because it is quite true. If we didn't have folks like you who enjoyed this channel and supported it, we wouldn't be able to keep this thing running every day, and we wouldn't be able to talk about little side topics like trains here and there. I'll save the train talk for later, in the question segment most likely. But beyond that, I do have to thank you massively for the support. And I also got to say, model trains are sick. And I do like that you have the CSX LNN Heritage Unit. I think that's pretty cool, honestly. And so, a humongous thanks to you so much once again. I hope that does address that the best I possibly can as well. And of course, if it wasn't for folks like you, we just wouldn't have been able to keep this channel rolling for years now, for years. And we're going to keep it rolling for even more years. It's really crazy, you know? Like, we've been running this channel for 1,316 days as of today. I remember when it was a huge deal when we made it to 365 days, and it was a year of war that we have been covering, and now it's been 1,316 days, which is almost 4 straight years of news coverage, 6 days a week, every single day but Monday, at 10 p.m. Eastern Time, every single night. People count on us like a reliable bus service, and I think that is an amazing sort of a thing, and I'd love to know that so many people have been here with us tonight already. At the peak, there was 19.6 thousand people here who are once again considering the Enforcer channel to be their #1 source of news. And so, a massive thanks to you so much once again. And also, Gary said, no war, no Enforcer. Oh no, there'd still be Enforcer. There'd still be things going on. Something is always happening. Unlike the Chudjacks, who say that nothing ever happens, I believe different. Something is always happening. And it's true. If you ever look out there in the world, the people who say nothing ever happens have their head in the sand. They don't know what's going on. There is a lot that is always going on out there in the world. And so we would still be around covering news, because if it isn't a war, it's the murmurings and developments of a new war that would be coming, or some other major diplomatic development that would be going on during that time. So I hope that does address that the best I can. And also, you know what? I will throw in one little train rabbit hole. I'll throw in a little one for now, and it won't be about model trains. It will be about a historic train in America. We talked about this a little bit, but it's one that I've been finding very fascinating recently, and that is the Promontory National Park and also the Golden Spike National Historic Park. This place is actually based right where the promontory Golden Spike was laid. And if y'all don't know, the Golden Spike was when the Central Pacific and the Union Pacific built their railroads across the whole of the United States and connected them right here at Promontory, Utah. And this is where the two came together. You can actually see them right there on the satellite picture. It was a really cool sort of an event, really neat. It was the first time in the world that anyone had been able to build a railroad coast to coast from one end of the continent to the next, which was a huge deal, not only for us, but for the whole world. And one thing that is incredibly interesting about this is that I've been doing loads and loads of research on this thing, at least recently. And one thing that's incredibly interesting, I did not know this, but a little interesting fact for y'all, the Transcontinental Railroad was completely unusable in its original construction. The Union Pacific just built the rails to get the government money. And so when the tracks were connected in 1869 between the Central Pacific and the Union Pacific, most of the Union Pacific's trackage that they had built was considered largely unusable. It took several years for them to actually be able to get it up to what would be considered mainline condition for actual trains to be run consistently across the Transcontinental Railroad. So while it technically opened in 1869, it didn't really see full operations until about the mid-1870s or so, which is a really interesting sort of thing. You can actually still see a part, at least, of the old Central Pacific route that was rebuilt, which is the Big Fill. And here it is right here. That's actually the Big Fill. Right down there would have been the Big Trestle by the Union Pacific, but that was all ripped up because it was garbage. Nobody thought it was well built. You can actually see where the Big Trestle used to be right through there. But anyways, with that, I hope that does address that well. A huge thanks to you once again for the support, Sparky. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And our next one goes to Lord Cog, who puts in a $50 support. And thank you very much, Lord Cog, as well, for the largest super chat of the night. We do appreciate that very much for being a longtime channel legend. And Lord Cog said, thanks for what y'all do.
And thank you for supporting the channel so that way we can keep doing what we're doing. I got to thank you incredibly for the support, Lord Cog, because if it wasn't for folks like you, we wouldn't have been able to keep this channel running, and we wouldn't be able to make this thing a reality even still to this day. You've been with us for quite a long time, actually, and I got to thank you incredibly for supporting this channel and helping it to keep rolling, because once again, it is the viewers themselves through their support that helps us to keep this channel running day in and day out. We don't run ads or sponsors on these live streams, and so the way that we make our bread and butter to keep our lights on and pay our bills is directly through viewer support, like Lord Cogs and like Sparky's. So I gotta thank everyone who's been supporting the channel tonight, both big and small, because y'all all come together to help us to make this thing a reality and to keep doing this as our full-time job every day. So huge thanks to you, Lord Cog, for what you just did, because you're helping us to keep our lights on and keep on air every single day. And so with that, a massive thanks to you so much once again, and we are on to the final question of this segment, and then we're going to be moving on into the rest of the news for the night.
And this one goes to Marion Deemer, another longtime channel legend, who throws in a very generous $50 support. And thank you very much, Marion, as well, for helping to keep the channel running, and we do appreciate that very, very much. And Marion said, you both rock, and Slava Ukraine, and Hiram Slava.
Hey, thank you so much for the kind words, Marion Deemer. I gotta say, you rock, and I gotta thank you incredibly for the support and helping this channel to keep on rolling, because of course, if it wasn't for your support, where in the world would Enforcer Matt and me be right now? Well, we wouldn't be here. Oh no. We would be, I don't even know where, honestly. Like, I don't know where we would be right now, at least. But still, a massive thanks to you so much once again. I hope that does address that amazingly well. And with that, folks, it's time for us to move on out of the question segment and back into the news for now. And so moving on into the Middle East, we were able to hear that the Russians are conducting some suspicious flights, airlifting large quantities of military equipment to Iran in recent weeks, with flights expected to increase in frequency. According to OSINT warfare sources, they can confirm that Russia has delivered the S-400 as surface-to-air missile system, along with fighter aircraft, most likely MiG-29s, though the exact type has not yet been independently verified. Very interesting sort of a development. In the meantime, the United States is decreasing its military presence in Iraq from 2,500 troops to fewer than 2,000. Most of those troops will now be stationed in Erbil, and they will no longer be stationed at both Erbil and inside of Baghdad in Iraq. We also saw that the Israelis conducted an airstrike today against Hezbollah forces within the southern part of Lebanon. and it does appear that that car was cooking, and not the vegetable oil type of cooking. The Israelis have also stated that they're seriously considering carrying out more strikes against the Islamic Republic of Iran, and according to senior Israeli military officials, they may have to carry out another strike on Iran, making it fairly clear they're openly considering further actions against the Islamic Republic of Iran because they are still clearly working on the development of a nuclear weapon. In the midst of all this, Turkey is actually also taking a stance against the Islamic Republic of Iran, as Turkish President Erdogan issues presidential decrees to order assets frozen of dozens of Iranian entities linked to Iran's nuclear program, including Iran's nuclear organization and multiple Iranian banks. So it actually does appear that the Turks are getting involved in this as well. Very interesting sort of a development with that. Very interesting, as a matter of fact. Moving on from that and down into Qatar, the United States has also extended some protections against the Qataris as the U.S. forces are once again moving in. The United States has announced that it will regard any armed attack on Qatar's territory, sovereignty, or vital infrastructure as a threat to peace and security of the United States. So it does appear that
Oh,
the United
wow. That's a pretty big one right there, honestly. That sounds like a direct response to what Israel just did a short while back by attacking Qatar, saying they were going after the terrorists, but still, nonetheless, they attacked a U.S. ally. We obviously have Al-Udeid Air Base there, which is one of our most important in the region. Honestly, I would say that's a good move right there because Israel really went out of line, in my personal opinion, when they decided to attack Qatar because they were putting a U.S. base in jeopardy of being ejected from the country. So I would say good on the United States administration for doing that. They took a pretty strong stance against Israel on that one, but I would say it was pretty much warranted.
I'd have to say that was a good call. As many of y'all know, I wasn't a fan of what happened with the Israelis hitting the Qataris. I said that that was not a good move. Some people, they didn't like that. Some people like that. Generally, that has nothing to do with me liking or disliking Israel. Generally, I think that Israel is a fairly important ally of the United States, at least within the Middle East. But that also does not mean, like I was saying a long time ago about that situation when it happened, that also does not mean that we will sacrifice every other ally in the Middle East to appease the Israelis. That also does not make any sense. So I would generally have to say the administration took the right call on that, balancing our other allies in the region along with the Israelis, and pretty much not telling all of our allies in the Middle East, if the Israelis do something to you, even though you're our ally, you're on your own, and you just have to deal with it. I think that was a pretty good move that was made, and I gotta be honest with y'all, we gotta have Qatar. Qatar is
Yeah.
a interesting spot, a strategic location, if y'all do not know. It's literally in the middle of the Persian Gulf. It's a thumb.
Yeah, we gotta have Qatar. Like I see some people saying that Israel's a better ally than Qatar. I'm not debating that. Like I would say between Qatar and Israel, Israel's definitely the better ally between the two. But the catch is though we can have both of them, and we have to have both because Israel's our way to power project, and Qatar is our way to have a military presence in the Middle East as the United States directly. We have to have Al-Udeid Air Base. It's not an option. So when Israel starts taking shots at Qatar, they're basically taking shots at our air base, basically, even though they didn't directly target it. They're putting it in jeopardy because the Qataris could say, if you're going to let your ally Israel fire at our country, then we'll simply eject you and your air base out of our country. That could be the bottom line. And I have a very strong suspicion some threat like that was probably thrown around in the background toward the United States, because for the U.S. to take such a strong stance against, in my opinion, Israel in this case, I would say it sounds like Qatar was so unhappy that they were at least considering it on some form or another.
I'd have to say so, but really quickly though, folks, if some people say that Israel is a better ally than Qatar, so Qatar can be sacrificed, or Qatar is a better ally than Israel, so Israel can be sacrificed, I want to put it this way, because I view things, folks, as an American, so I look out for America's interests. I'm not really into this whole, nonsense where you have to support some country because they're cool or you have some sort of a specific personal reason for it. The Israelis are a great ally to have, but the one problem that I have with the Israelis, just speaking personally, is that they do not allow U.S. forces to base inside their country unless if there's some sort of air defense forces to defend them against someone else. They don't allow us to set our air forces inside of Israel to power project ourselves into the region. We pretty much just provide them with their own weapons, and then we kind of have a little bit of loose control over what they do, but they kind of do what they want. With the Qataris, however, the Qataris sit around and they don't really do much of anything, and they allow us to put as many of our armed forces into their country as we could physically want. Like, we can put it whatever we want in Qatar, and they generally don't bat an eye. And that's something that Qatar is quite valuable for. Israel is valuable just generally because they are, they have a mutual enemy in the Islamic Republic of Iran, and for that reason, they are quite beneficial. But Qatar is also equally beneficial because we can put our forces in Qatar, but we can put hardly anything in Israel unless if it's something to help defend Israel from an air attack. Like, if y'all ever look at the U.S. forces that are in Israel on any given year, it's literally only a THAAD defense battery, and that's it. That's all we have there. And that's the only thing they allow in, and they don't allow us to have offensive capabilities based inside their country. It's purely defensive and defensive for them. Qatar will allow us to base offensive and defensive capabilities in their country, and not only that, when the Al Udeid air base attack happened from Iran on Qatar, they also were involved in the air defense of a U.S. airbase at Al Udeid. So, I mean, that's a pretty significant sort of a thing there. So I'd say they're equally valuable. But at the same time, I don't like the idea of, when it comes to an impasse between allies like Qatar and Israel, we just sacrifice Qatar or Israel or one or the other. We can have them both, but that also means the Israelis don't have a blank check to go around bombing everyone that they want in the Middle East and just act like it's no big deal, and we've just got to start cutting allies off that are important to our position in standing inside the Middle East. That's just the honest truth of it. So I hope that does address that the best I can, at least in my opinion. And also, I saw someone earlier say, "Well, I guess you're fine with Iran attacking Americans in Qatar." No, we weren't. We actually said that we ought to bomb them for that, and then we just gave up and completely ignored that, which I thought was kind of weak, because we let the Iranians get the last word after Midnight Hammer. I thought that was a bad move. So I don't know if you just joined the channel, but we are very pro-American, like, especially myself, to the point that I would not let, if I was the president, the Iranians get the last word. They should have just shut up and accepted that they got bombed in Midnight Hammer and not responded at all. No face saving, no nothing. They hit Al Udeid. All U.S. forces had been evacuated from Al Udeid before that happened, technically, but that still was an attempted attack against U.S. forces at a military installation that we have inside of Qatar. And for that reason, considering that they wanted to save face, that would have been, if I was the president, my opening to go into a multi-week-long airstrike campaign against the Iranians and teach them that they don't play face-saving games with the United States. They're lucky that we just gave them a once-over with Midnight Hammer and didn't do anything further than that, and then they got a little bit too, took it a little too for granted, and then tried to save face, and that was a mistake in my opinion. But anyways, with that, moving on out of the Middle East, it is time for us to move on over into East Asia for just a quick little update. Taiwan has completely refused the U.S. offer to move 50% of chip manufacturing to the United States, generally because they understand that it's a major card that they have in their hand, and that if they keep most chip manufacturing inside of Taiwan, the U.S. isn't able to just kind of wholesale them off and go, well, we don't really need to defend them now. One, they're important for our island containment chain, and two, if they keep the chips there, they're important because they're producing the semiconductor chips for most of the world. So for that reason, Taiwan has rejected the U.S. proposal. As far as the United States is concerned, this is not a good move. As far as Taiwan is concerned, this is a great move for them because it will ensure that the United States will defend Taiwan tooth and nail so that we don't lose the semiconductor chips and wafers that they produce at TSMC inside of Taiwan. So moving on out of East Asia, it's now time for us to get on back into Europe. We have loads of news that came out of Europe today. Moving us on into Germany, there was a fire at the Stuttgart Air Base, or Stuttgart Airport, which closed it down until further notice. We have not heard the fire being put out yet. Meanwhile, in Schleswig-Holstein, we also heard that the situation there was apparently more serious than thought, at least according to the Germans. According to the statements made from the Federal Republic of Germany, authorities stated that the drone incidents over Schleswig-Holstein were more serious than first thought. Swarms of drones deliberately flew over critical infrastructure, including the ThyssenKrupp Naval Shipyard in Kiel, Kiel University Hospital, a power plant, the Kiel State Parliament, and the Heide refinery that supplies Hamburg Airport with kerosene. So practically every single major strategic target within the state of Schleswig-Holstein. That is not good, much at all, as a matter of fact. And also, by the way, I want to show y'all this. That's up in Kiel. Let me go show y'all this. This is the shipyard. This is the German naval yard in Kiel. And they build ships here. Big ships. Nice ships. Well, they're not huge ships, but they're pretty decent ones. They're not bad off at all. And it's a very interesting sort of a thing. You can actually see a picture of that shipyard right there. And also one of the smaller diesel-electric submarines that they were building at that shipyard. It's a very nice looking one. It's sleek, it's streamlined, it's clean, basically put. But the drones continue to be a significant issue. But someone has finally blown the lid on at least one drone incursion, and that was the Norse. The Norse have ended up finding out that there was another drone incursion recently around the area of a small little Norse town. And let me see if I can zoom in on it. Where in the world did it go? Hold up. Where in the world was this thing? Yeah, it is right there. So,
Oh, you're looking for Valhalla?
I'll see you in Valhalla, brother. But here it
Yep.
is.
Yes, brothers.
Here it is. Svolver. I think I may be mispronouncing that. The AE letter right there, that actually used to be a part of the English language back when there was a heavy amount of Norse influence in Old English, but in the modern age, we don't use that letter anymore, so I might be mispronouncing it. But beyond that, there was a drone that flew over some fairly important shipyards within this area. And the Norwegians actually found out who was flying it. And they ended up arresting 8 people that were involved in the drone incursion. All 8 of them are Chinese nationals. That is a fairly interesting sort of a bombshell. I honestly expected they'd be Russian nationals. Apparently not. At least according to what we're hearing from VG, 8 individuals, all Chinese nationals, were detained but not yet questioned. The incident is under investigation at the moment. So this is the first time that we have heard of any drone incursion over a sensitive area anywhere in Europe where the perpetrators were caught pretty much on the spot, at least from what we're hearing allegedly. And from what we are seeing right now, at least from what the Norwegian authorities have conducted as far as arrests, all 8 people who may have possibly been involved are all Chinese nationals. So this is making this whole situation even more complicated. What if all of the drone incursions in Europe are from Chinese nationals, possibly? What if they're all from the Russians, but this one is from a Chinese national? What if this is an interference that's being run by the Chinese to take some heat off the Russians and make Europe think that it might be the Chinese? Now this is adding so many different variables into this. This is getting a little bit confusing.
But those are bigger drones though, going over most of these places, like the airports and stuff. They appear to be larger drones, like more of the Shahed like size drones. Some of these drones sound like they're talking about like UAVs or some type of little quadcopters or something like that. I don't think these are necessarily the large drones that we're hearing about right now.
I don't know. They didn't really give any details about the drone that was seen over the shipyard. They just said that there was a report of a drone sighting over Svolve near the airport, which led to the seizure of the drone and the equipment. They didn't state how large this thing was or how small it was either. And so it may be any type of a drone. And on top of that, we don't even know the drones that ended up getting into Schleswig-Holstein. They said there was a swarm. And that could be smaller drones as well, or larger ones. It's just that we don't have enough information out of the Norwegian situation to say that it was a small drone and every other drone has been a large drone. They really didn't say anything about the drone, the parameters, or the specifications of it, at least from what I was seeing, from what I was looking at today.
Yeah, maybe so, maybe so.
Maybe so, maybe so. Possibly, possibly. Allegedly. Allegedly. But moving on out of that news from Norway, it is time for us to ask you all a big question about that drone swarm that was in Schleswig-Holstein. And Matthew, what are people thinking about that? What are you thinking about that as well?
Oh, damn. Well, whoops, that was not intentional. I was trying to click on the poll and I actually
Man, I didn't even know I did a
clicked on the
punchline
soundboard.
right there. That was great.
I accidentally clicked the soundboard. I was trying to desperately have my mouse over the mute button on Discord. I was about to sneeze there a second ago, and then I accidentally drug it over and I drug it across the soundboard. But anyways, getting to the poll question after that little slip up, the poll says Germany admits that swarms of drones have been flying over critical infrastructure. And what are your thoughts? So 63% said NATO is very vulnerable to drones, while 32% said NATO is simply choosing not to act, and 2% said it seems like something minor. So I would say personally, it sounds like NATO is very vulnerable to the drones, I would say. NATO simply choosing not to act, I don't know. I think it might be a combination of both. It depends on the country we're talking about here. If we're talking about Denmark, it looks like Denmark has chosen not to shoot the drones down. It sounds like Germany, though, might be dealing with a different drone problem. Honestly, they might be a little bit more vulnerable because they might be using smaller drones, at least based on what I'm hearing. It sounds like they're smaller drones flying over critical infrastructure. So I'm actually in between, actually. I didn't put an option up for being in between, but I'm actually in between. But Enforcer, what say you?
I'd have to say he's just droning on, but then it's not on cue. but beyond that, I would have to say I would be with 63%. I would say that NATO is very vulnerable to drones at the moment. We do not have a system that's fielded in mass yet to be able to defend the whole of the alliance against any sort of a drone incursion, and so I would say that we're quite vulnerable to it. I'd have to be with the 63%. And so, moving us on, it's finally time to get to the eastern part of Europe, which we haven't even gotten to yet, and then the war in Ukraine. So moving us on into Poland, we were able to see that this Dutch F-35, which was flying around, has a marking on it. Look at that, Matthew. It's got a drone kill marking.
It's a Dutch plane. It's a Dutch.
It is Dutch. But you know, Matthew, what the Dutch be doing out there?
They be giving them they be giving them the Dutch.
Man, they be putting that double Dutch on them. But beyond
Man, they get them that Dutch fudge. You have some.
Man, what a man. You know, I'd have to say that the Dutch air defense inside of Eastern Europe, it was very Gouda.
Yes, it was. It was very good, very sharp.
Oh, well, the Gouda isn't sharp. What are you talking about? He's a spy. He's a spy. But beyond that, it was a drone kill marking on an F-35, which I thought was really cool. And it's a Dutch F-35. So it is the one that actually shot down the drone inside of Poland. So that is really cool. So moving on from that, and out of that little bit of news, we also heard that Poland scrambled jets last night due to another drone attack inside of Ukraine to make sure that if anything crossed over, they were going to blast it. This is an F-16C. This is an F-16D with conformal fuel tanks. And so a little bit of an interesting note, just in case y'all didn't know. F-16C, sleek. More so refined. F-16D, chunky, bigger boy, but effective, and also twin seat. Moving on from that, we also heard that 30 combat aircraft from the NATO alliance were airborne in the eastern flank today as a part of combat air patrols. And now, moving us on, finally, into Russia. We were able to hear that there has been apparently, oddly enough, at least according to Fitux Network, a rise in Russian oil exports by 25% in September, despite the drone attacks. Daily loadings of Urals, Kebko, and Siberian light grades at Primorsk, Ust-Luga, and Novorossiysk in September jumped by 500,000 barrels per day, up 25% from August. That is a fairly interesting deal. We have seen the Ukrainians landing significant attacks on these ports, and yet the Russians claim that the numbers are increasing, and I think the numbers might be fibbed a little. Like, I'm actually thinking that, because I think the Russians are the ones publishing those numbers, and I don't really know if those are accurate. I think the Russians are just trying to pretend like more oil is going out, but that would be really tough to believe, because Fitux Network and ourselves have observed a great deal of attacks on these ports, limiting their abilities, and it's a little bit wild to think that somehow the number would still have increased even with the Ukrainians attacking their abilities. So we'll have to see. We'll have to look into that a little bit more, but still a very interesting report from Fitux Network if it is true. That's an incredibly odd sort of an occurrence. Moving on from that and into Yaroslavl, we did also get to see a fire that had broken out in Yaroslavl, and oh boy, folks, what do y'all think it is? It's a refinery.
Oh no, it's more oil burning. That's a shame right there.
Hooray! Damn, someone was about to upchuck.
Go back, let's hear that again.
Bro,
that was an animal. I don't think that was a person, that was a thing.
Dude, that was a bird out there in the tree. It said, it's a wonderful.
Oh man. Or it could be a Russian throwing up as he realized that his whole job just went by the wayside or something.
Man, I cannot pay for rent. But anyways, we also got to see it cooking from up close. And that ain't vegetable oil, folks. That's real oil. Well, it looks like that another refinery is gone. Very shame. Very big shame. Very sad. Bad thing. No good. Moving on into Moscow, we did get to hear that as of today, from what we know, Russia shuts down nearly 40% of refinery capacity and is now turning to gasoline imports from China. After Ukrainian drone strikes on Russian oil facilities, almost 40% of the country's refining capacity has been halted, the largest collapse of its kind in all of Russia's history. In response, Russia plans emergency measures, including importing gasoline from China, South Korea, and Singapore, eliminating import duties and even subsidizing importers from the federal budget. This will end up becoming unaffordable for a long period. Authorities also aim to increase supplies from Belarus and reintroduce the toxic MMA additive previously abandoned in 2016 due to cancer risks. Over the past 2 months, Ukrainian drones have disabled more than 20 major plants. Over the weekend, the list grew to include the Yaroslavl refinery, which we just saw, and the Sukodolnaya pumping station in the Rostov region, hit by at least 10 drones. You know, that Sukodolnaya pumping station is a very interesting one. But I don't know if any of y'all have heard that just an hour ago, the Ukrainians hit the Sugandiz pumping station up there in the northern region of Russia. And a lot of y'all are saying, wow, where in the world is that? The town of Sugandiz. And I'll leave that up for y'all to find out. But moving on from... Okay, well, we don't have to do that.
Look at that.
Man, but moving on out of Moscow and on down into the Kursk Oblast, we also get to see that some Russians were getting hit inside the Kursk direction, which we can see right here in this clip.
Oh, look at that. They're really moving there. I don't think they have any electronic war defense on top of that vehicle. Looks like it got smashed, double smashed.
Triple smashed.
Respectfully. Uh-oh.
And we see that that van is burning now. It doesn't really look like a van anymore. Oh, here comes another. This is a Sprinter van. I think they're sprinting, not the van. Also, Shibata Floof, please don't ask that question. You're setting yourself up. You're setting yourself up. Don't do it. Don't do it. But you see them targeting another one. And hitting a Ural. And now looking at that cooking Ural. You know, that would be a good...
It's cooking like a nice Christmas roast, honestly. You know how you put that good roast in the oven and stuff and you let it sit in there with the seasoning? It's kind of like that.
Man, it kind of is like that. You know, that would be a great name for a form of cooking or cookery, would be Ural cooking. I think that wouldn't be a bad idea. But moving on from that and down into our location unknowns, we also got to see that a Russian drone that was trying to hunt some Ukrainians ended up getting a little bit of a disaster happening to it. We can see it here flying down the road, slowly yet surely, looking for Ukrainians. It's going to drop down in altitude here, and what's that? It's getting brighter behind the drone. A little bit brighter now. Oh my God,
Oh,
it got rear-ended.
It got rammed. It got rammed. Oh, geez. And that guy barely missed it, too. Like, he was lucky, I think, he smashed it. What was it, a vehicle that smashed it?
It was a Buhanka that slammed right into the scene. A Russian Buhanka slammed into a Russian FPV drone that was flying down the street and ended up crashing it. Like, you could see the Buhanka kind of right there, one of the flips that it did in the air. But it landed down in the grass and it did not explode, and it ended up being pretty much destroyed by the impact. So pretty wild. I've never seen that before. That's a first. And moving on from that and into the Russian casualty reports, we also got to see that the losses were pretty decent today. And unfortunately, I do not see Miss Disa Keeper of the Records over here. I think we actually missed this the other day, but let me check. I actually do not see Miss Disa over here. What?
Also, Miss Disa is here, by the way, but Miss Disa is lurking due to some technical difficulties in the background. So she is here. It's just some tech things, some tech glitches, I guess you could say.
Unfortunate. But nevertheless, over the past 24 hours, we have been able to see that 920 Russian troops have been wounded and killed over the past 24 hours, along with 3 APCs, 33 supply trucks, 1 main battle tank, 13 artillery pieces, 249 drones, and that was it. Still a pretty decent day, not a bad one, and of course the Ukrainians continue to fight on. Speaking of fighting on and moving into our front lines, we were able to see around the Soledar front some Russians getting hit by the 2nd Battalion of the 30th Mechanized Brigade. Well, you see the drone stalking them, following them through the trees. And coming on down, it's getting lower now into the trees.
This looks like the location of those Russian, North Korean labor camps for, like, timber logging.
Man, those Siberian logging camps.
A Siberian rainworm.
Simesian bowl drivel.
You want some of that sorium brandy? He got. Oh
Oh,
no,
oh,
that
he
was a
opened it.
bad idea. That was a
Yes.
bad idea.
The number one rule, folks: don't open up your door and invite a drone in. That he broke the rule. Oh, that thing's cooking. I guess
That
you could
is
say over
terrible.
easy. Ah, I'm like, man.
Oh man, over easy.
Man, that did not sound like a laugh. That sounded like you were like you're breaking. You're like, oh, it's like, bro, you sound like you're being tortured. Not without my mind sifter. But moving on from that and down into Touretsk, we also get to see the 28th Brigade landing a couple of choice hits on the Russians as well. This is the
Was this like choice cuts or something like that? Like this is that A prime rib right here. They call it grade A. It's Russian FSD inspected or FSB inspected, depending on which one you're talking about.
Oh man, I got myself some FSD. but anyways,
Federal security, fill in the blank. Oh, there's like this thing. It's a rolling coal. That's not a good idea.
Man, I guess you could say that thing ended up rolling coal till the end of its days. Moving on from that and down into Prokrovsk, we also get to see more Russian forces getting hit, this time by the 68th Jaegers. Oh, look at this guy. Oh, he got out of the way.
It's Oktoberfest in the Jaeger Brigade, yes.
Dude, this guy sat there, he turned around and went, oh, don't mind me, let me let you through. And he just moved right out of the way, and the drone went right past him. It's like, maybe that wasn't a good thing in the end. But anyways, we could see them coming down on another Russian vehicle, and they're trying to make a run for it, but alas, it's too late. Oh, another one. Another Bahanka. And they're about to get it. Get him! And they got him. Oh, is that another one? Oh.
Another one.
Another one. And it's a Bahanka.
They didn't believe in us, but we did.
Many people have said, why do you trust the Ukrainians in this war? Well, I trust the Ukrainians more than the Russians by a good bit. And that's why I like them. If you have to pick one or the other, if you're Russian for time or you're Ukrainian, I would rather have Ukraine. That's what I would rather have. I would not be Russian. I'm not one to rush. Alpha Chads do not rush. I'm not an Alpha Chad, by the way. I don't do that stupid stuff. But we can see them here going after a Crown Vic. Like, what the hell is this thing?
They're bringing in the 1980 police law enforcement special. And they're going to bring it on the battlefield and rev up that V8 engine and give them some smoke.
One time, I went to Detroit, and there were many people there who said, excuse me, I have once been to jail/prison. I would like to buy the cruiser that I was arrested in. And it was a very weird thing. I do not understand that. But it was what they did. But anyways, you can see them hitting some Russian tanks.
They say Ukraine is the type of country to buy the old Crown Vic and drive it down the fast lane, scaring the drivers into believing it's a police car when really it's just Zelensky.
You know, many people say that in Detroit you can tell a drunk driver because they drive in a straight line. Not because they're trying to fool the police into thinking that they are not drunk. It's because they are so drunk they do not miss the potholes in the interstate. But moving on out of the Prokrovsk front and further down the Zaporizhzhia, we also saw the 128th Mountain Assault Brigade assaulting some Russians that clearly weren't in a mountain. I think these guys need to rebrand. I'm just kidding, by the way. It's a mountain infantry unit. That's why they're called a mountain brigade. But we can see them hitting the Russian positions here in these tree lines. You know, I find it kind of weird, folks, that Ukraine has any mountain brigades at all, because the only region that they have a mountain in is the region of Uzhhorod, and it's the Carpathians, and it's hardly any of it. So it's like, what's the point of them having a mountain infantry unit, considering that they have no mountains to fight in?
Well, once you stack up all the Russian equipment one on top of the other, like your foot one in front of the other, then you realize there's plenty of mountains in Ukraine.
Here in Ukraine, we build our mountains out of slag like Chris's mom or Russian casualties, like one or the other. And we can see them just going to work. I mean, they're doing great work down here, folks. Oh!
Oh, wow. Oh.
Oh, dang, this guy's running like a cartoon. Like, what the hell? Bro,
Did you see that name? Do you see that name on top of this drone, like, display screen right here?
let's see. Sons of Cores. Huh.
What does that mean?
I think that's like a Warhammer reference.
Interesting. I thought it said something else here for a minute. I thought I saw a W.
Welcome, sons of... and we will cut that for legal reasons, but moving on from that and on down the way. That is actually all of the news that we have for today. That was me moving y'all down the way. That's all the news we had. There was no speech today from Zelensky. He was too busy to give a speech. But nevertheless, folks, it's time for us to move on into the second segment of this stream, where we get to talk to all of y'all. And I've got to say, folks, that it is an incredibly fun and great time to get to chit-chat with all of y'all. We get to talk about anything and everything. Everything and nothing. The only things that are not on the table are politics, religion, climate change, or whether the A-10 is relevant in modern warfare or not. Those things are off the table. But everything else is on the table, and one may ask whatever they please, as long as it does not violate one of those 4 golden rules. And of course, folks, there will be many talks tonight about many interesting things. Historical facts, locations, places, things, cars, planes, trains, ships maybe. Places people would like to visit, food people would like to eat, people saying they enjoy the show, people saying they hate the show and then getting banned, all kinds of folks, all kinds of things. It is one hell of a segment, and I hope that y'all will join us all in this segment. By the way, folks, I do want to let y'all know that here very soon, we are going to be having to make a public announcement to y'all about a significant time of channel outage. I kind of want to go ahead and put this out there now because it's coming around not soon. Well, it's coming around sooner rather than later for the larger part, because the Enforcer HQ is going to be doing a significant move cross country. Many of y'all will know that the Enforcer HQ is currently based inside of Birmingham, Alabama, and here in about several weeks' time, we are going to have to make the daunting journey of our entire headquarters from Birmingham, Alabama, all the way to Salt Lake City, Utah. Why are we doing that? Generally just to get a change of scenery, for the better way to explain it. But that will be a pretty decent time that we are off air. Possibly, I think it's something around 5 to 6 days. We're going to try and keep the outage as small as we possibly can, but I do want to put that out there to y'all that that's going to be towards the latter end of the month. And as we get closer to that period, about 2 weeks out, we're actually going to start giving y'all the specific days that the channel will be down, and also broadcasting that to all of y'all so that way y'all will know when y'all can expect the channel to restart. We don't want y'all to think that the channel just fell off the face of the planet and that we completely stopped and we're no longer around. It's just that we are having to move the entire headquarters from Alabama to Utah, and that is a pretty significant journey. That is pretty much 2/3 of the, well, about half of the entire continent that we're going to be traveling across, at least from east to west of the United States, and we're going to be making that old trip the pioneers used to take, those pioneers! So we'll have to see how all that goes. But anyways, with that, folks, it's time for us to move on into all those questions. I just want to make sure that we got all of that out there for y'all at least a little bit early and started to broadcast that to y'all so that way the word can spread around that there will be an outage towards the end of this month for a while, but we will be back on air after that brief interruption or intermission. By the way, I just also want to put that out there that this is going to be kind of a little bit of an unprecedented one, because unlike other instances where Enforcer Matt might be gone or I might be gone and there's still short war videos or streams or the both of them being uploaded all the time, even while someone's gone, we're both going to be on this expedition to move the HQ. So we will not be able to run streams or make videos during those set days. That's kind of why I want to make sure that we tell y'all about that up front, so that way when y'all see that there's nothing being uploaded, videos or streams, everyone isn't thinking that the world just collapsed and we're dead, or, you know, something like that, or rumors start to spread. We're just moving the headquarters. And we're going west, like Ashley Redmond said. Go west, young man, go west. And we're going west. We're going west to the Great Salt Lake, which is a really interesting place. Anyways, enough of that. It's time for us to get on into the questions. And also, you know something, folks? You know something that's very interesting that I learned recently? Is that up here, near this place of Kelton, you see, there's a place up here called the stinking sulfur springs. And I actually found out, Matthew, that there is sulfur in this area of the state, near on the northern part of the Salt Lake. And for that reason, it stinks. It actually stinks. Like, there's nothing that can be done about that. It reeks of sulfur. And I did not know that at all. But let me see here. Oh, yes. So this is it. Yeah, this is the spot. I wanted to make sure that I was getting that right. So somewhere around here, here they are. This is it. This little area right here. This is apparently the stinking sulfur springs. And I was like, huh. I was like, I bet
It
you that's
smells like doo-doo up there, I think.
rotten eggs. That's what sulfur smells like. It smells like rotten eggs. So if you ever go around this area, it will smell like straight up rotten eggs. So very interesting stuff. The Salt Lake is famous for its smell. I've heard that the Salt Lake has had a smell for a while, apparently. But Utah Lake, on the other hand, down here, I've heard that it does not have a smell, and it's just fine. So let me pull that up. Does Utah Lake have a smell? Does Utah Lake have a smell? I'm not interested in your AI crap. Let's see. Oh yeah, so apparently, um, oh dang man, this is like a historically known thing. Um, yeah, so apparently the Salt Lake, the Great Salt Lake, stinks to high hell. I didn't smell it when I was personally out there. I guess you have to be really close to it, like close to the shore to smell it. But that's interesting. Apparently the Utah Lake has no smell at all, though. It's just like a normal lake. But
I can
anyway,
attest to that. I went to this one, and there was no smell.
there was no smell. It didn't smell smelly. This one smells very smelly. Like it's from what I was reading, it's some sort of algal blooms inside the lake that capture organic material inside of them, and it decays inside the algae, along with the algae doing what it does, which creates a terrible stench. But that's fairly interesting stuff. I did not know that. Anyways, folks, it's time for us to move on into the question segment of the night before I start giving you all the rabbit hole information that I've learned about that area historically, which is actually quite a great deal. But anyways, it's time for us to move on into the questions. So Matthew, what do we got?
All right. And honestly, I can't wait to get on that road trip. I'm telling you what, I get to drive the big truck. So I get to be a trucker. I've always wanted to be a trucker a little bit. I've always wanted to shift a few gears and stuff like that and see the what is that? Wasn't a hot dog man's job in the military? Is he was supposed to be shifting a few gears and hauling some stuff for transportation?
Oh
Wasn't that his
yeah,
MOS?
92
Oh,
Alpha.
yeah. I think I could shift a few gears without any experience too. Oh man, I might get some PTSD on the way there. I don't know, but anyways, moving in to our first super chat question here. This one goes to Paul Liam, who puts in a $30 support, and thank you very much, Paul, for that support. He said, "Fantastic coverage as always," in LSA.
And LSA, and a big thanks to you for enjoying our amazing coverage, because it comes here from Birmingham, Alabama, and straight from Birmingham, Alabama to the world has been the enforcer for 3.5 years. And I got to thank you massively for the support and helping this channel to keep running, because if it wasn't for folks like you, we would have never been able to make this channel possible, and we wouldn't be able to keep up with the fine, upstanding work that we're still doing to this day. So a massive thanks to you so much once again. I hope that does address that incredibly well. And with that, we're on to the next one.
And this one is going to go to none other than Riker, who puts in a 20. And thank you very much, Riker, as well, for that support and also helping to keep the channel running. I do not see a comment attached with it, though, but thank you very much once again. And Enforcer, what say you?
I got to thank you so much for the support. You didn't throw in a comment, but we're massively appreciative. You're helping this channel to keep rolling day in and day out. And if it wasn't for folks like you, well, we wouldn't be here. We would be crying somewhere under a bridge, in a box, holding out a mug filled with coins. And we'd be hoping that people would give us enough money so that way we could buy one strudel from Starbucks, maybe, or some other place, because Starbucks is really expensive nowadays. Those snacks are. They're like $5 a piece, $7 a piece. Like, have y'all ever heard of that? A damn grilled cheese being $6. Who in the world sells grilled cheeses for $6? Starbucks does. Starbucks does. I don't know of anyone else who would sell a grilled cheese for $6, but it is a pretty damn good grilled cheese. I will give it that. But $6 though? I mean, that's kind of crazy, especially for something that's reheated. But anyways, I hope that addresses that well. Big thanks to you once again. And we are on to the next one.
And we also have a $20 super chat from the wealthy demon, who I hope we convert to an angel one day. They put in $20 support, and thank you very much for that support once again, good sir. He said, "What do you think the EU and NATO will do when, not if, the power plant melts down? And would that be considered as an attack, since the radiation from it can and will spread through the EU and NATO nations or not?"
That's an interesting question, and I would generally have to say it most likely would not be considered an attack by NATO, because while it may be because of Russian incompetence, the Chernobyl nuclear explosion was also caused because of Soviet and primarily Russian incompetence as well, and we did not see any sort of an invocation of Article 5 or anything similar. I have a feeling that the response would actually be a little bit different. I think that everyone in the world would try and come together and offer assistance to liquidate the plant and to start trying to clean it up immediately after it happened. So I would think that that's probably what's going to happen, because then at that point, starting a larger war would only impede the abilities of repairing the plant or generally trying to clean up the accident. So I think there may be an international support of assistance or offer of assistance by everyone at that point to try and mitigate the disaster that would be happening in that area. And then if the Russians deny that, then we probably get to go into war with them. But I do thank you for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, it is time for us to move on into the next one. But a big thanks to you so much once again for the support, the Wealthy Demon, and I hope that one day you become Angel, because Angel makes salary when work overtime, but Devil when take salary. But anyways, a big thanks to you once again. And with that, it's time for us to move on into the next one.
All right, so this one goes to Hands on Fire, who puts in a 20, and thank you very much, good sir, as well, for being a longtime channel viewer and also supporting the channel once again. And Hands on Fire said, "Thank you guys for all the hard work you put in, and you've been my go-to for factual world news." And take one from the chat.
And I thank you for enjoying us for the factual news. We don't get into BS here, we get into the facts, the hard facts, the truth. And we aren't like those other channels that say that they're all into truth, but then it's all political opinions and they pretend like it's a factual truth. We just get straight up into truth. And I gotta say, I thank you greatly for enjoying that and supporting it, because you help us to be able to stay on air and continue to deliver the news of truth of what's actually happening out there in the world to loads of people every night. We've already had 102,000 people watch this stream in just the first 2 hours, and 19.5 thousand people were here at the peak. If I pull up Playboard right now and I go look at the ratings, I'm betting you money that we're on up there near to the top. Let's go take a little gander. Let's take a gander up Gander Mountain, everyone. What do we got? Hold up, folks. This thing takes a minute to load. Oh, buddy. Hold up, folks. I'm trying to find it. Oh, look at that. Look at that. On today, October 1st, we were number 25 in America.
Oh, wow. Look at that. Now, that's pretty good right there. The top of the top quarter. You got to love it.
Yeah, Fox News happened to beat us for the first time ever. Like, it's like crazy to see. Did something major in the political world happen? Because there was actually a decent amount of political people who were on up here towards the top. And I was like, oh, what the hell's going on with that? I mean, you know, like, so it's mysterious, questionable. But let me see here. What were the ratings like on the 30th? I haven't looked at these actually for a minute, so I'm trying to see where in the world we're placing these days. Oh, this was Monday. Yeah, we weren't even here. Let's go to Sunday. This would be Sunday, technically. It says Monday, but we're technically showing up here for Sunday for some reason. I don't know how they do it. We were number 25 again.
Hey,
we beat the Associated
we got it 2 days
Press
in a row. Very nice. Look at that. We even outdid the White House viewership too.
You know, folks, that is actually crazy. Less people watch the White House's live stream, which literally is the President of the United States, than our show. Kind of a little wild with that sometimes. And the Associated Press. Who else was on the chart that was like a major mainstream news organization? PBS at number 60. Let's see here. Oh, yeah, the government shutdown. You're right, Miguel. It is the government shutdown. That's probably why everyone's doing well. Oh, Live Now from Fox. That was also there. Let's see. Huh. Yeah, interesting. There's not really a lot of them. And how times have changed for some people. I mean, geez, a little bit interesting with that.
Oh man.
You know, down there at the bottom, was a little bit crazy. But beyond that, I gotta say that it's a really crazy and incredible thing to know that so many people watch this channel to the point that we're one of the top 30 in the country practically every day at this point. I really don't know why we're up at the top. I'll be honest with y'all. I'm yapping like I always yap for years. I yap like this on air and off air. You know, the only thing that doesn't happen on air is that I don't talk about trains as much as I should on air. I talk about trains a lot in the background because it's my safe place mentally. When things are too much, I go to the trains, and I'm pretty happy there in that spot because the trains are interesting to me. I had a lot of Tylenol as a kid. But beyond that, I do thank you massively for the support and helping this channel to keep on running, because you're helping us to be able to be the voice of news for loads of people every night these days. So a massive thanks to you so much once again. I hope that does address that incredibly well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, so let's get that live chat question, and this one goes to DC, who said, "Are the Chinese attempting to instigate a fight between Russia and NATO?"
Maybe. I mean, maybe. I would doubt it largely, though. I would feel like most of these drone incursions are most likely being conducted by the Russians. I think the Chinese nationals, if they are the ones who are flying that drone, would be an outlier. So I would say I would doubt it, because a war in Europe really wouldn't benefit the Chinese all too much. As a matter of fact, it might hurt them, even if they stayed completely out of it or got involved. But still, a big thanks to you once again for the support and helping this channel to keep on rolling. I hope that does address that the best that I can. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And our next one goes to Boulder Boy, who puts in a 55, and thank you very much, Boulder Boy, as well, for that $55 support. Very generous of you, and the largest super chat tonight. And the Boulder Boy said, "Have some moving money."
Hey, thank you for the moving money. We need some moving money. It's not cheap to move that far, actually. But I do thank you massively for the support and helping this channel to keep running, because it is folks like you who will help to make this channel possible and help us to keep it running. And if it wasn't for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to be here right now. We wouldn't be able to be here talking about moving to Salt Lake City. And a lot of people have asked, why in the world Salt Lake City? It's nice. That's really the only thing that I can say about it. It's a nice city. I went there myself. I can personally attest. It's nice. The people there are nice. The city is nice. There are some places I would avoid, like Midvale. Like that's a place I'd avoid. Midvale, right there. But you know, there's a lot of cool places here. There's a lot of cool places. Downtown Salt Lake, you know, it's kind of hit and miss. Like I saw some working folks out there on the street, two of them. And I was like, oh, that's interesting. You know, downtown might be a little bit of a wild place. But beyond that, it was a pretty cool spot altogether. Like it's a massive city. It's huge. Like if you measured it from end to end, from north to south, the whole of Salt Lake City is 21 miles across, and it's about 15 miles across at its widest. So it's a really big city. I mean, it's huge. And then you also have Provo, you know, where you can go down and maybe get discriminated against. And then you got Ogden, which has a whole bunch of other cool stuff to do. And then you have Park City, which is on the other side of the mountains right here. There's like ski slopes and all that sort of a cool thing to do in the winter if we want to do that on a Monday off. There's mountains. There's loads of things like the salt flat out here. That's a salt flat, everyone. It's made of salt. And you can eat it. I'm just kidding. You can't eat it. Don't do that. But beyond that, it's just a cool place. It was a cool place. It was an interesting spot. And so that's why we're heading out there. So I hope that does address that well. If any of you, also, I know that a lot of people are asking this, are we Mormon? No, we're not. Like, we're not Mormons. It's just that it's a nice place. Maybe because of the Mormons. I wouldn't know. But it is a very nice spot. I thought it was great. I thought the people out there were nice. So it seems to be a #1 contending spot. Also, by the way, folks, I do have to share with y'all an interesting fact. Back in the day, when the Mormons first came here, which are pretty much the first settlers that settled this place that would once become Utah in the future, the Mormon leader at the time, who was Brigham Young, if I'm not mistaken, actually started to move forward with a concept of creating an independent country within a country for the Mormons. The Mormons were going to have their own little country within the United States. So Brigham Young, if I'm remembering the story correctly, or Sam Eli, one or the other, had this idea of creating a self-sufficient nation. So they were going to source everything from their own. And so what they did is that they set up resource colonies throughout the area. Salt Lake City was their actual capital, and that's where the Mormon temple at Temple Square is at. And I'll also show something cool about the streets here in a little bit. But beyond that, that was kind of their capital. Then they had St. George, which was actually called Dixie for a while, because, Matthew, why in the world do you think this would be called Utah's Dixie?
I have no idea.
Because this is where they would grow their cotton to make their shirts.
Interesting.
Yeah, so they actually have like this whole like southern style thing going on here, and they call it Utah's Dixie down in St. George. Then they had, let me see if I can find the other one, Cedar City, which I think was for the timber. And then they also had, let's see, I'm trying to find the other one. They had some other city. It was like called Coal City or something like that. That was for the coal, obviously. And then they had a couple of other cities elsewhere, and each one of them did a specific resource. All that died when the Transcontinental Railroad was built through here up near Promontory. And also the idea of a Mormon independent state also died off as well with the founding of the state of Utah. But if y'all are ever wondering, what in the world was the state of Utah going to be called if it became like a Mormon country within the United States? It was actually going to be called the state of Deseret. So if you ever go to Utah, you'll see stuff like Deseret News, stuff like that. That's actually based off of the old name that the Mormons wanted to give Utah if it ended up becoming an independent state or a semi-autonomous nation for the larger part, but that never came into being. So it's just kind of like a Free State of Jones or the Free State of Jefferson or something along those lines, sort of a naming convention. It's something that's been lost to time why that name is around, but that's the reason why. Another cool thing to show y'all here, speaking of like Mormons in Utah and everything since they were the first settlers, they also came up with the naming conventions for the streets that travel east to west in Salt Lake. Most of Salt Lake's based on a grid. And if you look at the streets, look at this, folks. Here's Temple Square, which is the epicenter of Salt Lake City, at least when it was originally made. Now it's not. It's more so in the northern end. But if you look at the street just south of that, you have South Temple Street, which is right on the Mormon temple, the main temple. And then you go south of that and you have 100 South, which means that you're one block south of the Temple Street. And then if you go south from that, it's 200 Street, and then 300, and then University Boulevard, which was once 400 South, and then 500 South, and 600 South, and 700, and 800, and 900, and so on and so forth. You can literally go all the way down Salt Lake City to down here, 4500 South Street. And that's 4500. I think it's something like blocks away. It's 45 blocks away basically from the temple. So that's how their naming convention for the streets going east to west works inside of Salt Lake City. I did not know that when I first went out there, so I thought the names were just whack. Like they'd have like exit 16,000 South Street, turn right here. I was like, what the hell's up with this? Like every single one was named like that. I was like, is this like a military thing? It's actually a Mormon thing. So I was like, that's a really interesting way to name the streets. But anyways, with that, I hope I share with y'all an interesting fact about Salt Lake City, which still exists today because of the original Mormon settlers that came here. And by the way, folks, I do want to just share that with y'all. The Mormons are not a significant, well, the Mormons are still a significant part of Utah, but they're not like 80 or 90% of Utah, but they were the original settlers of the Salt Lake Valley area. Because this is actually, I think, where Sam Eli came down. I think it was Immigration Canyon, and they camped out in Immigration Canyon, and he looked out and saw the Salt Lake, which, crazily enough, folks, nobody knew that even existed, really. Everyone thought it was a myth that trappers would tell and share whenever they came back to a civilized area, and they would talk about this giant sea in the middle of America, and everyone's like, these people are crazy. So then when Sam Eli came through and he saw it with his Mormon settlers, he said, this is the place we're going to be, because there's a huge source of water nearby, and it also looks like it would be great for agriculture. So that's why they ended up settling at Salt Lake City and founding the place as their first city, or generally the main city in Utah these days. So I hope that gives you a lot of interesting history about the state of Utah. Crazily enough, while it's a very young state in terms of its modern settlement, it actually has a lot of interesting and rich history, which is a fairly interesting thing. But anyways, with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, so moving on to our next one here. This one goes to Manfish Meldrum, and thank you very much, Manfish, for that $20 support right there. He
Hey!
said, thank you for keeping us up to date on the current madness, and where do you think we'll be in a month from now?
I hope that we'll still be in the same position looking down the gun of a world war that we're in right now. I would hope that we're not. And so I would generally say that's what I would hope we are at in about a month. Every day is unpredictable at this point. It's pretty much impossible to tell where we're going to be from a day-to-day basis. So even saying what's going to happen in a month is really hard at this point. So just based off of my hopes, I would hope that we're still in the same spot we're in right now a month from now. And so with that, I hope that has addressed it well. Big thanks to you so much once again for support and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And our next one goes to Siri, who's a longtime channel legend who puts in a $20 support. And thank you very much, Siri, as well, for that generous support right there. Siri said, thank you for providing an oasis of civility and congrats on 500,000 plus subscribers, Enforcer Bros. And know your hard work is appreciated. And shout out to my badass Aunt M watching in Bergen and XO from Oslo and LSA.
Hey, thank you so much for the support, Siri. And also, a big shout out to Bergen in Norway. Little city, but it's a cool one. Take a look. The city
Bergen. You gotta like the place.
It's a cool place. A nice place. Bergen. That's a cool street right there, actually. That's really neat. But beyond that, oh, what's this? Is this an intermodal yard? We'll save that for another time. We'll save that for another time. But still, the big thanks to you so much for the support, Siri, and thank you for enjoying the channel, and thank you for saying that it is a safe haven or a safe harbor of civility in the modern age. I like to pride the channel myself on the idea that it is. You don't see the kind of craziness or insanity that goes on in most other live chats and YouTube, or crazy stuff being said like other people say on YouTube. You don't see that here. It's a very civil place. We like to keep it that way. And I got to thank you so much once again for the support and helping this channel to keep rolling, because if it wasn't for folks like you, we would have never been able to keep this place a place of civility and a place of reason, which is something that you just don't really see a lot anymore on the internet. But a huge thanks to you so much once again, and with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and our next one goes to Wealthy Demon yet again, who puts in a 20, and thank you very much, Wealthy Angel, for that support right there. And they said, with the French saying that nothing is ruled out, would that mean that they are also willing to use their nuclear warning shot doctrine? And if so, what would a warning shot even look like, as crazy as that sounds?
We do not want a world war. However,
However.
but
the French do not mess around. If they want to try, I don't know why I'm doing a Russian accent for Macron. I can't really do a French accent, really. I just can't do it.
I don't really know how either. I was thinking about how to do it. I was like, I'm going to not even try. But it technically does include that. Everything being on the table, or, you know, pretty much the full breadth of consequences. Generally, if it's a Russian air incursion, they're not going to fling a warning nuke at the Russians, but they'll shoot that plane down, and then however the Russians respond, that warning shot nuke is on the table at some point down the line in terms of the escalatory ladder. So technically, yes. And also, I saw Gregory C. say, a warning shot, LOL. Yeah, they're in France, they actually have what's called the warning shot doctrine, which doesn't, like, mean they shoot a nuclear weapon across the bow to, like, scare you. They actually nuke you, but it's a warning nuke. Like, that's the nuke that goes, hey, you're going a little far, we're about to kill everyone. That's what that warning nuke means, or the warning shot nuke. That's a specific thing in French doctrine, because it's supposed to provide, at least in the French theory, one last escalatory step before complete annihilation is the warning nuke. So that's kind of how that works in France. I don't know how that would work in practice. I feel like if someone saw a strategic caliber nuke flying their way, they're going to release everything, and then the warning nuke was for naught. But at least in French theory, that's supposed to give them one last escalatory step before they completely annihilate whoever they're at war at, or the enemy annihilates them. That's how it's really supposed to work, at least in their theory. But I hope that addresses that well, at least what the warning shot nuke is. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And our next one goes to Mark Ead. And thank you very much, Mark, for that $20 support. We do appreciate it very much. And he said, sunglasses, man.
Sunglasses? Who needs sunglasses? Man, my future's so bright, I have to wear shades. But man, I don't never get that when I need it. Oh, man. Oh, buddy. Oh, man.
You don't get that little, hey, man, I mean, well, are you not doing your job? I mean, where's the sound? Oh, damn, there we go. Thanks, but Jack, thanks next time. Do it a little quicker. Anyway, also, by the way, I was looking in the live chat and I saw Disney Dad. He's an LDS member. Glad to have you. He said, have you seen the ginormous NSA facility in Saratoga Springs? Utah, that is. I personally hadn't seen it recently, but I've heard of it. Well, where is it?
Where is this NSA facility? Where is it? Where the hell is this thing, actually?
Type it in the search bar, Jack. I mean, come on, man.
No, Jack, no. We gotta find it for real. That's what we do. Where the hell? Where in the...
Come on, Jack. Use the search bar. Type it in. Use your keyboard. I mean, are you okay? I mean, can you type? I mean, come on, man.
Are you good? Are you all right? Did you slip and fall? Slip and fall school? What's going on?
Look. Listen, if your kid sees an alien, make sure you tell somebody. Don't keep that quiet.
NSA. Oh. It's a
Oh, the
parking
Utah
lot.
outpost. It's got a bad review. Bad review. It's of course the public's not allowed inside there, so I'm not sure how it's got reviews.
They already know why they're getting 1 star. Man, coming in hard. When the Geek Squad said they couldn't revive my old laptop hard drive, I came here. Great people and quick service. Already have a duplicate of my hard drive when I showed up. Wow, that's actually really nice of them. They claim to have no idea who I was, which I know isn't true because they've been watching me for years. Just wanted to delete my browser history. They denied my request. RIP. Love this place. Their coffee sucks. Best internet ever. Customer service is top notch here. They make you feel like you were the only one visiting the facility. It was as if they could read my mind. They even supplied me with an armed escort for the duration of my short visit. Wow, that's kind of them. Also, the picture was blurred out, not a real photo. Let's see.
Oh, what the hell? They blurred the dang photo. It's like you can drive by and see it.
I don't know. I don't know why they did that. Like, why would they? You know what? Let's look at the street. If it's blurred out, I'm gonna get a laugh. Oh, it's over a hill. Wait a minute. What the hell is that? The Staff Sergeant Aaron R. Butler Readiness Center. What the hell
That's
is
military.
that? Is that like the Utah State Guard or something like that? What in the world is this? What is this? I feel like that's a part of the Utah State Guard of some type. Like, that doesn't sound like something that would be a part of like the Army Reserve. Well, I might be wrong, but
Honestly, they've got a lot of good stuff out there in Utah when it comes to like government stuff. Like they got the NSA outpost down here in Saratoga Springs. They've got Dugway, which is out to the west of Salt Lake City, over the like whatever that mountain range on the left side of Salt Lake's called. They got a lot of good stuff out here. And then if you go into Nevada, they got plenty of extra good stuff over there because most of the state's government owned anyway.
yeah, it's great. It's all federal property, everyone. That means it's public. Hooray! But not really, not really. Some areas are restricted. Restrictions may apply. Consult the manual, and also batteries not included. Limited time warranty. But that is a very interesting building right there. And I gotta say, very interesting to know that we do have some members of the Latter-day Saints here with us. I hope you've been enjoying the show. And also, really interesting building, actually. I did not know about this facility myself. But very interesting nonetheless. The Museum of Natural Curiosity at Thanksgiving Point. Well, what kind of Thanksgivings are
Oh
they?
wow, that's nice. I like
Oh,
that
wow.
building, the glass building like that. It's pretty clean.
It's like a place for kids. That's nice. It's good to know that they have like giant places for like families to go and stuff and enjoy a day out. Like this place. This place is really nice. Like, look at this. They got a huge park and everything connected to it.
They don't really have stuff like that in Alabama when it comes to like family oriented stuff like that. You can you don't really have that. You kind of just like go to the store, you go to the restaurant, and then you go home, and then you get stuck in your car in traffic the rest of the time. Or at least that's been my experience.
Actually, Matthew, you're wrong. We have one grand bonding experience that we have here in Alabama.
What's that?
Football!
Oh yeah, football. I
Football!
forgot.
Football! Get your kid out there on the damn football field now! That boy's 6'2". He shouldn't be in the band. He should be a linebacker now. Man, that's a hike. Boy, you better learn because everybody knows everyone ain't got no damn chance in Alabama ever getting ahead. You gotta get into football, and that's your only chance. Like, you gotta go to Alabama. But beyond that, we don't have anything like that here in Alabama. I mean, we have like the McWayne Science Center downtown. But that's like not like this. This is a totally different level. So, really interesting with that. Look, Beef Hollow. Wow. There's many jokes we can make about that. I'm gonna let y'all fill in the blank on that one. Let's see. Oh, buddy. What else do we have around here? Oh, look. We have the Union Pacific Main Line and the Frontrunner track. Right next to it, you can tell the difference. This one to the right is the Union Pacific owned trackage. This one to the left is the expansion that the front runner's making. So that way they can double track the main, and they can also increase the track speeds to 110 miles per hour, which is expected to be done by 2027 if we're all alive by then. So that'll be really cool.
That would be cool.
Yeah, look, they even have concrete railroad ties to keep the tracks in place a little bit better. That's cool. I like that, folks. Really neat. But what else? What else do they have down here? Near Bluffdale. It's Bluff. It's Bluff. Um, hmm. Oh, what do they have? Thriller Park. Is that like Michael Jackson's Thriller? Yeah, but let's see. Oh wow. Gelato and ice cream. Actually, looks pretty good. That's like kind of solid there.
Would you care for a bonbon?
I'll have one. Like, how does it
How's it
taste?
taste?
It's a delightful taste sensation. No eating in my classroom, and then throws him like straight through the window. Oh man! And look,
Then we had a real instructor like that in real life that literally acted just like that. Like it was literally our JRTC instructor was just like that guy.
the good old days, man.
I'll tell you what.
Man, we got shit on by every kid in that class. But beyond that, they also have the Twin Peaks. Look at that. I mean, like, who doesn't? Where is this picture taken from? Probably a plane, I'd assume. But man, look at that. The Great Wilderness. Whenever they show y'all posters of the wilderness, they show y'all stuff like this. They don't show y'all what we have down here in Alabama. Do y'all want to know what we have down here in the South, in the Southeast? It's actually pretty in its own way, I'll be honest, but it's not like that. This is what we have, which is really pretty in its own way. But when you grow up here, like the whole tree-covered thing, you know, you see it a lot, so it just kind of becomes common. Kind of like folks out in the West, they get used to the Rocky Mountains and all. And so they get, you know, kind of worn out of it, and they think that down here is gorgeous. But, you know, growing up here and seeing this all the time, or something similar to it around Birmingham, you know, it's just kind of, it is what it is. Pretty, though. It's pretty. But, you know, I think the stuff out there out West is prettier. You know, the Romanticist painters, they made a great deal about this place. And honestly, deservedly so. And I mean, look at this. The Rocky Mountain National Park. This is not that far away from Salt Lake. This is like, I think it's more like 6 hours away, so it is kind of far away. But look at that.
No, it's not that far away. I think it's only like 4.5.
But look at it. It's beautiful. It's beautiful. Look at it. The mountains.
That is nice right there. Also, by the way, I see people mentioning this. So people are saying like, "What's the rent where y'all are at in Salt Lake City?" I can't say the exact rent because I don't want to give away OPSEC things like that. But at the same time, though, I will say, compared to where we're living right now in Birmingham, Alabama, and everybody knows how Alabama is, it's actually cheaper to be in Utah and Salt Lake City than it is to be in Birmingham, Alabama. It's for the same square footage and everything. It's cheaper in Utah, which seems unbelievable. It seems like it should be the reverse, but it's actually not.
Also, by the way, James Reed, you did send it a super chat. Please be patient. It takes us a while to get to them. They're not instantly answered. We go through a queue. So please be patient. We will get to it. But I mean, this is a beautiful place. What a beautiful place. What a beautiful nation. America the beautiful, you know, it's a beautiful place. I think the song is well deserving. But anyways, with that, I hope that does address that the best we can. A big thanks to you so much once again for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we're on to the next one.
Also, by the way, let's see. People were saying there's reasons for that. Someone said, "For real?" Yeah, for real, for real. And also, like, I'll tell you all this. Like, I know how it is to live in Alabama. I've lived here my whole life, and I can tell you that there's already more amenities in Utah by a long shot than what they have here. And I'm not just bashing Alabama just to say that. Like, literally, like, there's hardly any amenities in Alabama unless you're like going out to pay money to go do something like at a restaurant or something like that. There's literally nothing to do, like zero to do here. You can go to like one of the state parks, which they do have a couple near where we live, but the problem is they charge you to get in there too. So nothing is really free to do around here. And also the parks that are public and open, they're usually nothing that's like incredibly nice. So they're kind of worn out and a little bit like they look hot as hell. Like you walk out there and it's like just scorched grass and stuff like that. Nothing wild to see about it. So I don't know. To me, I just don't see it. Like maybe after a while I'll get tired of it out there, but it seems nicer, at least in my opinion, than Alabama.
Well, one thing that is, like, a couple of things that are obvious, at least to say this. One, Birmingham has next to no public parks, and the public parks we have, and, you know, this is probably the only one that I can think of in the whole city that actually is kind of like a public park, and it really is more just a large, flat, grassy area. Which, I mean, you know, that's a park, but it isn't really like a park like they have out in Salt Lake. Like, if I bring y'all out to Salt Lake, this is kind of what's shocking, like, at least as far as, like, the difference. Let me see if I can find y'all a park. Like, these are golf courses. Let me see if I can... Here we go. Liberty Park, right here. This is Liberty Park, which is a step above the one that we have here. And there's a lot of them like that around all of Salt Lake. I wanted to pick this one out just because it was, like, the go-to one. I kind of knew where it was. but it was really nice. And I was like, wow, that's cool. Like they even have trees. That's something you don't see here in Alabama in most parks. And so I was like, that is really cool. Another huge thing to me about Salt Lake City that's really interesting is that it's a metropolitan area that actually has a fleshed out public transportation system, which generally shows that as far as the civic mindedness of the city administration, there's a lot more of a civic mindedness there than there is here. Here in Alabama, the bare minimum is provided, and you better be grateful and count your blessings that that's just provided, because it could be a lot less like other places that we're from. This place actually has a full fleshed out public transport system, and they're building it out even further, which is really cool to me. And I was like, that actually shows that they are really well dedicated to benefiting the city and finding some way to improve the situation. Even if I never used the public transport, and I might not, that's just still an interesting thing to see that they think like that. One, the streets are well kept. A lot of them are being paved. They have huge roadworks projects going on, I think it was Highway 154, pretty much everywhere when I was there. And I was like, wow, that's crazy. They're like building these really nice bridges, repaving the whole highway. I mean, you would never see something like that in Alabama. Like no joke, folks. I'll tell you all a story about Birmingham. There was a critical warning that came out in the last administration. Actually, I think it was before that one. It was during the last administration of the current president, that the bridges that go through downtown Birmingham that hold up our interstates and highways were literally about to collapse. I think there was a warning like that came out at some point, and that was the only moment that they actually put the money in to replace some of these bridges, and some of them still haven't been replaced just yet. Like I think the Interstate 65 bridges still have not been replaced. The four clover, well, not the clover, but the four-way interchange down here I think was switched out, and this one was, but I don't think these bridges were replaced, and I don't really think these were either. I'm not really sure on that, but they literally waited until things were crumbling, no joke, and they were being told, this thing's going to collapse in a couple of years, and then they finally replaced it. And then also all the bridges in downtown are literally falling apart. Like, let me show y'all one of them. I think it's this one. No, it's the other one. Let me go to the other one. This bridge is collapsing. Like, I don't know if y'all can see that. The sidewalks are literally chipping up. And no repair work is done on anything down here at all. And everyone just keeps leaving the city. And when anyone leaves a building, it's like Spirit Halloween, but with a local university, which is UAB. This building now has a giant UAB sign on top of it because it was vacated, and then the university just bought it. And that's what they do whenever any building is abandoned down here. The university just buys it and like moves in. And it's like, it doesn't really say a lot about a city when the university is constantly expanding, not because it's getting a lot of new students, it's just because people are leaving the city and they're trying to not leave vacant buildings all over the place. So, with that, I hope that does address it the best I can. A big thanks to you, though, once again, for support and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And our next one here goes to Eric, who puts in a 20. And thank you very much, Eric, for that $20 support. He said, I'm worried, enforcers. I have a feeling the American heartland will be attacked with droves of drones from our enemies' shadow fleets. And what is it in y'all's thoughts? Honestly, Eric, I wouldn't worry about that too much because we can detect the vessels coming up to our coast. And the bottom line is, if we need to in the United States, they can control which vessels get close to our coast and start monitoring that and also enforcing it a lot more closely. So they could do it, but there's still a risk, though, that even a vessel could be parked out in international waters and they could launch them from there as well. That's just a risk, honestly, to have to learn how to deal with because that is a real threat in the modern day with warfare. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would say that it's certainly a risk. However, if we saw one of those ships approach from international waters, because it would be a drone carrier like Iran's, we could just tell them to get that thing away because it's posing a risk, or just have a patrol sitting out there waiting for the moment and just observing it, to where if any drones look like they were being fired in mass, we sink the ship instantly. Because while that ship might be able to make it here, it doesn't appear that any escorts would be able to make it here with the ship, meaning that it'd be a one and done sort of a deal to sink those sorts of vessels once they arrive. But a big thanks to you once again for support. I hope that does address that well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And our next one goes to F-35's 4PAF, who puts in a 20. And he said the new acronym is Tactical Anti-Communist Ordnance.
That's an interesting one. I think that's a good one. But a big thanks to you once again. I hope that has addressed that well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And this one goes to Jenna, last name Tolls, who puts in a 20. And thank you very much, Jenna, for that very generous support right there. And they said, when's the, let's see here. Uh, I'm not sure what this one means. I'm trying to double check it real quick. They said, when is the McDonald large fires going to be ready for battle?
Uh, I don't know. I don't know. I had to declare ignorance on that, but I do thank you for support and helping the channel to keep on running. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And this one goes to Gage8803, who puts in a 20. And thank you as well, good sir, for that support. He said, good afternoon, gents, and much support from SoCal Inland Empire. And my question is, what does war with Russia mean for other countries against U.S., for example, China and North Korea, etc.? As an aspiring officer, I appreciate that info.
And thank you so much for the support. And to answer the question, a war between the West and Russia, by country to country, to summarize it, for North Korea, it's the money days. They're probably not going to get involved with any additional manpower more than they are right now, but they would certainly supply weapons to the Russians because the Russians give them materials in return that benefit them greatly. For China, they would most likely keep it a proxy conflict. They wouldn't want to get directly involved. Who wants to die needlessly for Russia? Nobody. So they would just support the Russians with materials, and that would be it. And as far as the Iranians are concerned, they're kind of just more so a cheerleader, and they really wouldn't be able to provide much of anything to them at this point, rather than maybe some Shaheeds. But even still, they might be stretched to do that at this point. But I hope that does address it the best I can, and a big thanks to you once again for support and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And we have a 20 from Rain Stir. And thank you very much, Rain, for that $20 support. We do appreciate that. And I think that might be one of your first ever supports. And once again, a huge shout to help keep the channel running. And Enforcer, what say you?
And a big thanks to you for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. You didn't throw in a comment, but the support is greatly appreciated because it helps us to keep this thing running. So a big thanks to you so much once again. I hope that does address that well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and our next one is going to go to Wealthy Demon yet again, who puts in a 20. And he said, in regards to Russia selling more oil, would they be diverting oil from domestic use to sell in order to get more capital to fund the war? And could that explain how quickly the gas in Russia has been running out as well?
It may be, actually, because they're saying that the exports of crude had actually increased by 25%, so that might actually be directly correlating to prove your theory. So I do thank you for the support. I hope that does address that well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And we also have a 20 from Renegade Preppers UK. And a big shout out to you, good sir, for that support. He said, good evening, Enforcer and Enforcer Matt. Just to say thank you for your continued coverage, and just to say the war coverage would never have happened if the Enforcer was president. And it would never have happened, XD. And LTLSA, and thank you very much.
Hey, and I thank you so much for the support, and that's true, folks. Y'all gotta vote for me in 2040. We're not gonna have stuff like this happen again. I will finally be that one guy who will stop it. That one guy! Even if I can't control the other guy, well, we'll find a way. I want to make thanks to you so much for the support. I hope that does address that well. And a massive thanks to you for helping this channel to keep on running and helping us to both stay on air. Hey, it's a huge thanks to you once again. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And we have another 20 from Wealthy Demon, and thank you very much again for that support. And they said, what is your opinion on the news about strikes being confirmed to be happening in Venezuela in the next few weeks? And will it be like a Desert Storm 2.0 and weeks of airstrikes before the land operation? And will Colombia be next?
I have a feeling it's going to be a lot like the Houthi operations where we just bomb them and then call it a day at that and declare a victory. I would assume that's probably what we're going to do. I don't think it's going to be a Desert Storm 2.0, Highway of Death sort of a deal or anything like that. It'll probably just be like the Houthi airstrikes, and then that'll be it. That's what I'm assuming, at least, because usually from like the behavioral patterns we have right now, the current president goes for quick victories that don't last hardly at all, but can be claimed as victories in a very short-term window. So that's what I would assume at this point. And so with that, a big thanks to you once again for support and helping this channel to keep on running. I hope that does address that well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And we've also got a 20 from Renegade Preppers UK yet again. And he puts in that 20 and says, hey, Enforcer and Enforcer Matt. And this one for a random LSA chat question on the house. An LT and Slava Ukraine.
And long live the Lee Spring Army and Slava Ukraini. And we will make sure to get that live chat question in your honor. So what do we got, Matthew?
All right, so the live chat question is going to go to none other than John Underwood, who said, those sneaky Russians, they're still planning something going on. And is it the Suwalki Gap in the Baltics? Is that what they're going for?
I would assume if they're going for anything, that's going to be their first targets, especially the Suwalki Gap. So I do thank you for the support. I hope that does address that well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, so moving into our next one here. This one is going to go to none other than, let me scroll down to it. This one goes to Riker, who puts in a 20. And thank you very much, Riker. Once again, he said, I've got to head out soon, but I love hearing the train conversations and facts. And we've all got a touch of the Tylenol, I guess you could say.
And thank you, Commander Riker. but a big thanks to you for the support. And
Thank you, number one.
Resistance is futile, number one. But beyond that, I gotta say, a big thanks to you for the support, and thank you for enjoying my little train facts. I like to give them every once in a while. You know, some people say, show me the car facts. I say, show me the train facts, and the train facts be bussin'. I mean, unequivocally. People love them, or hate them. But I do thank you so much for enjoying them, and I wish I could give you all loads more of train facts. You know, folks, if I ever did a side channel, a personal channel, probably a lot of the videos that I would make, which I would never have time to make really, because this channel eats up pretty much every moment of every day, it would be about trains. It would be about trains. It definitely would be. There's no question about it. But huge thanks to you so much once again. I hope that does address that well, quite well indeed. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And we also have another $20 support, this time from none other than the Polish Drunk. And thank you very much, Mr. Polish Drunk, for that 20. He said,
Hey!
the NSA facility is across the street from Camp Williams, an OCS and Utah National Guard location, and the NAS building houses foreign metadata. And honestly, I would imagine they're probably housing a lot more data than just the foreign metadata. There's probably a lot of other metadata too, from what I've heard. But Enforcer, what say you?
I knew this was some sort of a state god thing, Matthew. I knew it. I looked at that building down here. I said, that's like a state god sort of a thing. It's a national god. It's a national god. Which is technically, I believe, the organized militia. And then we're all a part of the unorganized militia, everyone. Remember that. If you're an American and if you're a man in America and you're anywhere between the ages of 17 and 45, according to the Militia Act of 1903, you are the unorganized militia of the Republic. So technically, while you're not serving in any official capacity as a full-time militiaman in the National Guard or in the regular military or the Army Reserve or anything like that, technically you still are a part of the nation's armed force, at least according to the national, the Militia Act of 1903. An interesting fact for y'all to remember. Remember, we all serve together in the benefit of the Republic and the people. That sounds kind of communist, but that's the original sentiments that the Founding Fathers had. Anyways, a big thanks to you so much once again for the support and helping this channel keep it running and sharing that with us. And I would have to say that this data center is storing far more than foreign information. Oh, far more than that. That's why they call it a beef hollow roll. Or beef hollow road, not a roll. It's because there's a lot of beef up in that thing, you know? But still, a big thanks to you so much for the support and helping this channel to keep it running. I hope that does address that well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And our next one goes to Lucas Chimera, who puts in an 11. And thank you very much, Lucas, for that $11 support. He said, bum bum around, bum 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 bum. And he said, maybe that's what they're doing. I think that's what he said. I was trying to interpret what he was saying there. I'm not even sure that's what he's saying, but thank you very much, Lucas, for that support. And Enforcer, what say you?
Wow. Why should you stop playing that beautiful music? But beyond that, I thank you for the support. I mean, maybe that's what he was trying to say. Beyond that, I do thank you for the support and helping this channel to keep rolling. And with that, we're on to the next one.
All right, and our next one here, also, let me grab one thing from the spreadsheet. This one is going to go to a $10 super chat from Wealthy Demon yet again. And he said, I finally made it to another live stream. And by the way, Enforcer Matt, since we're both named Matt. Oh, and you're Matt, by the way. I didn't know that. He said, I'll let you be the angel and he'll stay as the demon. He said, how's that deal sound? I mean, you could. Or you could convert. You could. It's possible as well. But thank you very much, Wealthy Angel, Wealthy Matt, or whichever one you want to go by. Wealthy Matt, this sounds a little bit interesting right there. I kind of like the sound of that, honestly. I kind of like the sound of that. But thank you very much, good sir, for that 10. And Enforcer, what say you?
Oh, I thank you for the support and helping this channel to keep it running. If it wasn't for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to keep this thing rolling. I got to say, a big thanks to you so much once again. And I got to say, if it wasn't for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to keep this thing running. And I also see someone. I saw someone say, "Let me go get the Second Amendment. Let me go get it. The Bill of Rights and lefts. Oh, it's WWE Slam. No, I'm just kidding. But anyways, don't show that. What? Oh, the hell with that. Anyways, let's see. Here we are. A well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. So basically, just to cut this down for y'all, just in case y'all don't know, what this is saying is that the federal government will not make any laws infringing on the rights of the citizens to keep and bear arms, which technically has been violated many times, really, ever since like the 1920s. But beyond that, what this is saying is that the raising of a well-regulated militia being necessary to security of a free state, like the state of Alabama, the state of Utah, the state of so on and so forth, is necessary to their defense and security. And so the federal government was going to make no infringements on those rights, and whether the state wanted to make any limitations on those rights, that was to be up to the states. But nowadays, that's a little different. Nowadays, we have the federal government that kind of tells everyone what they can and cannot have, and so on and so forth. Technically, they don't. Technically, they kind of don't. Although the Firearms Act of 1986 does ban you from buying any machine gun made after 1986, the government doesn't ban you from owning short-barreled rifles and machine guns and so on and so forth. It's just that you have to go through a pretty intricate process with a tax stamp and a special form and all that to be able to get one of those. And they're also insanely expensive because of the 1986 Firearms Act. So technically, there's limitations, which you could consider as infringement. There's a whole deal with that. But I just want to put this out there because I do not know why some people say this. The Second Amendment does not give you the authority or the right to overthrow the government. There is nothing that's listed in the Constitution or the Bill of Rights that says that the citizen, if displeased with the government, has a right to overthrow the government. Because let me ask you all this. If the entire concept of the country, when it was originally founded, was that it was a democratic nation where every single person, although that wasn't true then, it certainly is now, if every single person in the country had a say by casting their vote for their leaders who would lead their constituency or the nation, why in the world would they also say that could be overthrown? The tyranny of many could be overthrown by the tyranny of one with arms. That doesn't make any sense, and that idea of a violent armed overthrow is just undemocratic in its own principle, just by the moral standpoint of it. But anyways, with that, I hope that does address that the best I can. And before we move on from that, I do want to say this as well, because some people do not know this. I'll pull this up really quickly. And let me see here. I want to show you this because some people do not understand this, and I don't know what is so difficult about not understanding this. Let me show you all this. One of the duties of the Congress in Article 1, Section 8 is that the Congress shall have power to lay and collect taxes, duties, imposts, and excises, pay for debts, so on and so forth, to do all of the following. And then the very last one is to provide for calling forth the militia, which was the original armed force of the country, generally, rather than the tiny standing army that we had, to execute the laws of the Union, suppress insurrections, which means uprisings, and repel invasions. So if the government ever gave you an express right to overthrow the government, why in the world would it also give the Congress the express right to raise funds to call forth the militia and suppress insurrections, which are uprisings? Like, that completely defeats the whole argument that's being made. And I'll just be completely frank with y'all. That argument was never made in this country's history until recently by a whole bunch of stupid people who do not understand the Constitution or how a democratic society works. Nothing in a democratic society gives you the right to conduct an armed overthrow of the government. In a democracy, it's understood that the way that you conduct a revolution is through the ballot box. You just vote in new people with radical ideas if you want, or balanced ideas if you would so choose. But there is nothing at all in the idea of this country or the government that says that you have a right to overthrow it. There's nothing anywhere. I mean, if you want the best example of that, let me show you the Whiskey Rebellion. Let me go show you all that. Because if anyone ever said the Founding Fathers wanted you to go overthrow the government, this is the clear answer that they didn't. Because this happened when George Washington was president. Give you all the short rundown. They raised a tax, I believe it was on corn or sugar, to start raising money for the government. And a whole bunch of people in Pennsylvania, farmers that made their money off of making whiskey and selling it, did not like that. So they took up arms against the U.S. government and against the tax. So what General Washington did, or President Washington at the time, he raised the army and the militia to suppress the insurrection, which is an enumerated power being is written down in the Constitution, to go and put these people down. And he went out there to Pennsylvania and he put these people down. He put down a rebellion against the government. So, I mean, like, if you even had a theory that the original Founding Fathers gave you a right to overthrow the government, then why in the world was it George Washington himself and all the founding fathers who were a part of the Congress at that time, in that point in history, that all came together and said, we're going to put down that uprising? That completely goes against the grain, because a lot of people always say the founding fathers wanted you to have the right to overthrow your government. No, they didn't, because they were putting down rebellions themselves right when the nation was founded. Every rebellion since then has been put down because it's undemocratic for people to think we're going to overthrow the elected leadership of the country, the will of the people, whether you like that leadership or not, with the force of arms. It's literally an undemocratic theory or a thought in itself. And I'll be entirely honest with y'all, while I do and do not like actions of the government, I would never support or endorse anyone conducting an armed insurrection or rebellion against the government. That is absolutely ludicrous, ridiculous. It's undemocratic. It goes against the theories and foundings of this country. And also, I would be a lot more scared of the people who were violent enough and crazy enough to try and conduct an armed overthrow of the government than I would be of the government itself, just to be entirely honest with y'all. Because it's like, if they're willing to take up arms against the government, they're willing to take up arms against the people themselves once they take power. They'll go to any ends at that point. They're radicals, I'd assume. So that's what my 2 cents on it would be. And also, someone said only if the government becomes tyrannical. And who in the world says that? You? Like, let me say this really quickly. Right now, in the current political environment in this country, whenever a Democrat's in charge, the Republicans are saying the Democrats are tyrants. Whenever a Republican is in charge, the Democrats are saying the Republicans are tyrants. That's how it works. So every single time we have an election in this country, and one party doesn't get their guy and he doesn't win, does that mean that it's a tyrannical government? And who in the world makes that judgment? And it's such an arbitrary judgment at that point, and entirely based on opinion and conjecture, that you could just support an armed rebellion at that point for anything because your guy didn't win. So clearly it's tyranny now, and let's go get him. And that just doesn't make any sense, because that sort of a concept there is a two-way street. Like, you think in your mind these things are tyrannical, so now I think that it is worthwhile to overthrow the government, or I'd support something like that. But then that also means the other side can say that when your guy gets in power and does the things you want, they can say he's tyrannical, or the Congress is tyrannical, and then do the same thing. It's just an undemocratic sort of a philosophy. Like, the elected representatives are the elected representatives. If you don't like them, vote them out. If you think that it's a nationwide issue, start campaigning on a national level to start getting people voted out. That's how this nation works. And I don't know why people think it's supposed to work differently these days, because it never worked like that, and it never was intended to work like that. So I hope that does address that the best I can, at least in my opinion. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, so moving on to our next one here. This one goes to Jason Carney, who puts in a 10. And thank you very much, Jason, for that support as well, and also helping to keep the channel running. We also have a 10 from No Please, and they said all these escalatory actions from Russia, the draft, the incursions, the heavier reliance on North Korean support, is Russia serious about its position to continue, or are they sitting on the fumes?
From what I understand, can you reread that one again really quick, because I missed the first part a little bit.
Yeah, he said all these escalatory actions from Russia, and the draft, the incursions, the heavier reliance on North Korean support, is Russia serious about its position to continue, or are they sitting on fumes?
They're sitting on fumes, but they are serious about continuing. It's a really mixed bag with that sort of a deal, and it's something that just doesn't really make any sense, because technically they're spent, but they're still willing to keep going until the end. So I really do not know how in the world they're managing that mentally in the government, but that's what they're doing in Russia right now. So I hope that does address it the best I can. A huge thanks to you for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. And also, I see some people, really quickly, I'll address this. Some people say, oh, the enforcer just got into politics. That's not politics. It's just straight up facts. I mean, like, that's not a political opinion. That's exactly what the country has been. Like, and also really quickly, I got to say this as well. Some people are really uninformed on this. Some people say, but the Declaration of Independence. The Declaration of Independence is not the law of this country, nor does it apply to anything at all. Like, the Declaration of Independence was a letter that the Continental Congress wrote to the King of the United Kingdom, telling them that the colonies were in open revolt and were now going to work towards making an independent state. That has nothing to do with anything in this country anymore. It is a great letter, a watershed moment in our history, but it does not apply to the laws of this country, the rights of its citizens, or anything along those lines. Saying that the Declaration of Independence has any influence on the modern laws of this country is like saying that the Articles of Confederation have any impacts on the laws of this country right now. If y'all don't know, the Declaration of Independence and the Articles of Confederation are just historical articles. They're historical writings. That's it. The Constitution is the only thing at the federal level that counts. The Declaration means nothing. Cool letter. It was a very important moment. It started the beginning of our fight for independence in this country, but has no impact on you being able to say, but the Declaration of Independence says, like, nobody in this country in a courtroom would ever go, Your Honor, I would like to cite U.S. Code Declaration of Independence as my legal defense. It's not a legal defense. It doesn't. And on top of that, the Constitution is the supreme law of the land. So that means that there's nothing trumping it, and that means the Declaration of Independence, even if it was a legal article, would be subordinate to it anyways, because the Constitution is the supreme authority written in writing of this nation. So, that's something I think a lot of people get really confused, is that the Declaration of Independence has no meaning on squat these days at all. It was a cool article, and that was it. But anyways, with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and our next one goes to Guedo, who puts in a 10, and thank you very much for that support. They said Russia is super weak, and we need to play this out and let China also waste their resources as well. And I don't know, just a thought.
I would say that at this point, the position that we are in, if we can maintain this and not have the Russians attack, is a great position. The Ukrainians have ground them down to a nub. If we can wait this out and somehow avoid a conflict with the Russians, that would be ideal. But it looks like the Russians are going to try and force a conflict anyways. Generally, if they do, we have no choice. We must fight. But generally, it's working out in our favor, at least for the moment. I think that's what's putting the Russians in the hot seat again, is that they know that, and they know if they don't start taking desperate actions that force us into a fight with them, then we're just winning from the sidelines here, and we don't even have to get directly involved at all. But a big thanks to you so much once again for the support and helping this channel to keep on running, because if it wasn't for folks like you, we would not be able to keep this channel running and make this thing a reality. And so with that, I hope that does address it well. And also, who LFG, you are correct. The reason why the United States is not a member of the ICC or will ever recognize the ICC as an international criminal court that adheres to anything inside the United States is that is an extra governmental body, meaning that's not run by the government, that is outside the parameters of the Constitution and also superior to the Constitution because it's an international court. So non-elected representatives, like this is how the U.S. looks at the International Criminal Court from a governmental level, non-U.S. representatives not elected by the citizenry of the nation or somewhere else in the world making decisions on arrest warrants that are then executable if we were a part of the ICC in the U.S. and we must adhere to them, and the Supreme Court doesn't have a say, as the Supreme Court is the Supreme Court of the nation and the land, on whether those are overturned or not. And that's why we will never be a part of the ICC, is that the ICC would pretty much violate the Constitution. It would actually create, I think, a constitutional crisis, if I'm not mistaken, Matthew, if I'm wrong on that.
The ICC can't have any jurisdiction in America because it's not a court recognized here. So yeah.
Yeah, so that would generally be the issue. That's why we are not a part of the ICC. But with that, I hope that does address that well. And we are on to the next one.
And our next one goes to Spiritus Capitalist, who puts in a 10. They said, hi there, and we're potentially all effed and cheers. And no, we're not. We're good. It's definitely trying times, that's for sure. The United States is still fine for right now, and also Europe's still fine for right now, too. They just need to deal with their drone problem they got going on. But excuse me. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would have to say that we're not really effed. Like it's a tough situation and it could get pretty bad from here. But we're not effed. We can somehow manage. We can pull through. We just have to make sure to keep a level head, try and focus on everything as pragmatically as possible, looking out for what will be the best for us in the long term, and make the decisions based off of that. If we can do that, we will be fine. If things happen worse from there, we'll just have to deal with them, but we will make it through. We will all make it through together, that is for sure. And so with that, I hope that has addressed that the best I can. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And we've also got a 10 from Altered Gaming TV, and thank you very much as well for that support. They said that there's definitely something up with domestic military airspace. I saw multiple large planes leaving from MacDill Air Force Base here in Tampa today that did not show on the map. I think that had to do with that nuclear exercise. We did see the E-6Bs in the air all over the country, and that's very unprecedented for that to happen. Well, not well, when I say unprecedented, not really unprecedented, but it is unusual to see that happen in such a large number. So it probably had something to do with that, would be my guess. Some type of nuclear readiness testing. But Enforcer, what say you?
That's generally what we would know as well. And so I would have to agree with Enforcer Matt on that. But a big thanks to you once again for support. And also saw Brian Runcival say Constitution is up to interpretation, but not to everyone. It's only open to interpretation to the Supreme Court as the final say, or a federal district court, if I'm not mistaken. So it's not like, private citizens can just go, well, I interpret the Constitution to be this. You have to go to what the Supreme Court has interpreted the Constitution as, and very rarely will they ever appeal a decision on an interpretation. But it happens sometimes. But still, that's where you would go to see what it means what in the Constitution. Like the Constitution has, the Supreme Court has interpreted the First Amendment to include the burning of an American flag as an extension of freedom of expression, or flipping off a police officer is also a protected act as a freedom of expression. That's what the Supreme Court has ruled in prior court rulings. And also there are some district courts. Generally how it works, from what I would know from my time in law school, is that a district court can decide if something is constitutional or unconstitutional, or interpret the Constitution, and that generally is the running say-so on what that is, what that part of the Constitution means, unless if that's then further elaborated on or overturned by the Supreme Court. Just to explain kind of how that works from my understanding. But anyways, with that, I hope that does address that well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And we also have a 10 from Dakota Doc, and thank you very much, Dakota, for that 10. They said, I believe if Russia becomes weak enough, China will retake outer Manchuria. It lost to the USSR in 1858. It's been an embarrassment to China forever. And what say you?
I would doubt it, because the People's Republic of China actually does not recognize Outer Manchuria as a part of their unrealized territorial ambitions. So I would highly doubt that. But I do thank you for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. If you find something funny, Taiwan, on the other hand, actually does consider Outer Manchuria a part of their unrealized territory. So the Communist Chinese don't, but Taiwan does. Kind of a little interesting with that. But a big thanks to you once again for support and helping this channel to keep running. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And also a big shout out to Christopher Cordray for putting in a 10 as well. And we do appreciate that very much, Christopher, and thank you very much for helping to keep the channel running. We also have a 10 from JL, who said, thanks for the channel, and what did you guys think about the drones that were being spotted over New Jersey and over the water nearby last year, or whenever that was? And I think I have to go with the official government explanation. Typically, I'd be questioning it or doubting it, because usually the government puts out things that are vague or sort of misinformation. But in that case, though, it sounds plausible that the New Jersey drones were probably some type of domestically tested drone technology that we're working on. That is maybe the case, but it's hard to tell. It probably is that, but yeah, I still have a little doubts. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would have to say that I would also have my doubts as well. But I do thank you for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And our next one goes to Arar983. And thank you very much, Arar, for that 20 as well. And that's very nice of you. And they said, just popped in the OG COD Modern Warfare on Xbox 360. And the original story of World War III begins in Ukraine. And LSA, Slava Ukraine.
Dang, how weird. That is weird, actually. But a big thanks to you for the support of RAR and helping this channel to keep on running. And that's a really crazy coincidence right there. But with that, we are on to the next one.
And we also have a 10 from Spiritus Capitalist once again. He puts in a 10. And they said, also, by the way, generally, this right here is sort of considered political, so I'm not going to read this one off. But Israel is the ally of the United States. Like in the Middle East, I know people have their feelings about Israel. Some people hate Israel. Some people love Israel. In my opinion, I'm not too caught up with the whole, how I personally feel about Israel. They are an ally of the United States geopolitically, because that's how we project power into the region. So for that reason alone, I support Israel as an ally. But outside of that, though, I do have some personal issues with Israel, but I don't get into all that because it's really not relevant, in my personal opinion, to geopolitics and how that relationship works. But Enforcer, what say you?
I have to thank you for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. I know that some people have some really jaded opinions about the Israelis, and some people look at them like they're just the best people on the planet. I would say that it's a lot more nuanced than that. And I'd also have to say, for one, for the people who hate Israel, I mean, any country in the world could be hated for the same reasons that people are hating Israel for. But also the people who unconditionally love Israel, I find that to be really weird. like, just to address both sides, because I really don't understand why it's not just a middle of the road kind of approach that most people take with Israel, where it's just, we have strategic interest in the region, we have common enemies, so we align with them. Like, I don't know why people don't look at it like that, because some people look at it like we have to give the Israelis weapons because then the United States will prosper as a result. And I just got to be honest with y'all, America was doing fine before Israel even existed. Like, I don't know why in the world people have this concept that if we, for some reason, did just completely stop supporting Israel, America would collapse or something like that, because America won the First and Second World War and Israel didn't even exist yet as an independent state, and we were doing totally fine, and we were the largest economy on the planet since 1860. So I don't really know why some people look at it that way, and some other people look at Israel as the absolute demon of the planet. Like it's just an extreme in either way. I just generally look at it just face forward, looking at it for what it is. Israel and the United States both hate Iran, and Iran wants to kill both of us. So for that reason, we're friends, because the Israelis deal with Hamas, Hezbollah, and the Houthis, which are terrorist forces supported by Iran, and we also want to deal with the Iranians eventually, just like they do. So we generally have a common alignment there. That's nothing more, nothing less. We don't have to support them because, if we don't, America's literally going to broil in hellfire and shit for the rest of history. And also, they're not the worst people on the planet. It's just that we have common aligned interests, and that's why we work together in the Middle East. But a big thanks to you once again for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And our next one goes to SC Dear Girl, who puts in a 10. And they said, please, it's pronounced al-Yadeed, or by deployed military, the deed. And we have almost set a 99-year lease on the base.
And thank you for the support and helping this channel to keep rolling. And I gotta say, that I cannot do pronunciations well. Like, you might as well just give up on that. I get things wrong all the time. I'm sorry. I know it bugs people a lot. It bugs me when I hear people say stuff wrong that I know is wrong. But I do thank you for the support and sharing that with me. And I'll try, but I can't give any guarantees on that. But a huge thanks to you so much once again for the support and helping this channel to keep on rolling. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And we also have a 10 from AMX10 Speedy Bang Bang, who said, live chat question, please. And we shall grab one. And thank you very much, AMX10, for that support right there. We do appreciate that very much. And also, we will grab that live chat question. And this one is going to go to none other than AF Kaplan, who said, how does the IAEA know how bad things are at the Zaporizhzhia Nuclear Powerplant? And have they been allowed at the site recently? And also, by the way, I want to say, AF Kaplan, so far, the official statements I've heard personally from the IAEA, they say there's no immediate danger at the Zaporizhzhia nuclear plant. But obviously, common sense tells us that even if that is the statement they're making, if there's about 20 days of emergency fuel at the generators, and we're currently about halfway through that, then that tells you that it's right on the verge of being a pretty big problem. So, have they been allowed to site recently? That's a question right there. I actually do not know. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would have to say I don't know if they've been on the site either, but according to their expert analysis, even from afar or up close, we're not really sure. They're saying it's a really bad situation. So we take them at face value because they are the nuclear regulatory agency of the planet. So a big thanks to you for the support. I hope that does address that well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And we also have a 10 from Draco L. Tannen, and he said, alien contact or World War III, which one first?
I would say World War III, like before alien contact. That's going to be a while down the future. According to Star Trek, that'll happen in 2060, and I'm shooting for 2060. And so, big thanks to you once again. I hope that has addressed that well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And this one goes to Manfish Meldrum once again, who puts in the 10. He said, thank you guys for everything. And I'm curious, what war films are your favorites? And mine is Das Boot. Honestly, my favorite war film is probably that one where they escape from that situation in Germany. I can't remember the exact name of it. Yeah, that one. I like that one. That's a pretty good one right there. I think that's a pretty good movie. That's solid right there. But Enforcer, what do you think?
I'm not gonna lie, dude. I felt so sad when the British guy who was going blind was guided out of the plane and they just shot and killed him. That was such a sad part of that movie. That was a great one.
That was a bad one.
But beyond that, I would say that my favorite war movie would probably be, dang, I gotta think. I've just watched a lot of them. Honestly, I find most of them enjoyable. One of my favorite movies, actually, it's a really obscure one, would be one of the, I think it was the original Guadalcanal movie. It was in black and white. It was made in the middle of World War II. It was a really good movie to me. I thought it was cool. And honestly, I really love a lot of the older movies. I'll have to say, though, I'm not really a big fan of the John Wayne ones. Me personally, like, I know a lot of people have like a really big hyped up thing about John Wayne, and a lot of people like him, but John Wayne plays John Wayne in every single movie, and that gets old, listening to him go, Hey, Pilgrim, you ready to, fight the Japanese? You ready to fight the Vietnamese? Are you ready to fight the Koreans? It's like it's the same thing every single time, and I'm like, this is getting old. And he like carried like that Wild West thing with him from like the gunslinging movies. He's like out there in like Vietnam. Well, Pilgrim, looks like the VC won't save you now. And I'm like, come on, man. I'm like, pick up a different act. Like do something different once. But honestly, I would say Das Boot's a great one. That was a good one. I would just go with the Guadalcanal movie, at least for now. I'll probably change that next week. But still, a big thanks to you once again. I hope that does address it the best I can. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And we also have a 10 from Miss Destiny, who put in at that 10, of course. And thank you very much, Miss Destiny, for that support. They said, never cry on air, Enforcer Matt, LOL. And I'll try not to. It's tough these days, I'm telling you, with all this horrible news coming out, just to break down and start sobbing on air. It's a tough one. But thank you very much for that support nonetheless. And we do appreciate that very, very much. We also have a 10 from Richard Huff. And Richard said, check out the train museum in Ellis, Kansas, if you go through there. And if not, there are lots of pictures in LSA.
Ellis, Kansas. Ellis, Kansas. Oh my God. Liberal. Like, it's Kansas. It's a place. Mid-America Air Museum. Oh, that's actually. Oh, it's a okay museum. Let's see. Huh. I didn't know there was a place called Liberal, Kansas. I zoomed in. I was like, that's news. But let's see here. Ellis, Kansas. Oh. I'm guessing the Railway Museum would be close to the tracks. Maybe. Oh, here it is. What do they got? Oh my God, it's a Union Pacific caboose. And they got a little aero train. That is a tiny one. That's cool though. And they got a nice little layout. That's cool. If I ever come through here, I'll take a gander myself personally. I'll take a look around. But a big thanks to you so much once again for support and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And our next one goes to F-35's 4PAF, who puts in a 10 once again. He said, Boracay is actually a beautiful beach destination in the Philippines. It's very affordable and worth a bucket list visit if you can endure the 18-hour flight.
Dang, 18-hour flight. Good God, that would be tough. But beyond that, I would have to say, we'll try and give it a look someday. Maybe we'll come to the Philippines someday in the future. But a big thanks to you so much once again. I hope that has addressed that well. And with that, we're on to the next one.
And we also have a 10 from Altered Gaming TV, who said, thank you guys for being my go-to nightly news. And has there been any additional news on domestic military aircraft outside of fueling planes? Multiple aircraft leaving Madill and Tampa this week. I do see on Flight Radar 24, it looks like there is a Global Hawk currently transiting through the Baltic states on the Belarusian border, it looks like. So that's currently a thing going on right now. But there's been a lot of military aircraft leaving right now, leaving the United States. There's a lot of deployments right now. So it's a lot to keep up with. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would have to say that I thank you for the support, first off. And secondly, we did hear about those E-6B Mercuries today. And beyond that, there's a lot of recorded and unrecorded flights. It's really busy at the moment. But I haven't heard of any additionally beyond the E-6 Mercuries that we were talking about earlier. But a big thanks to you once again. I hope that does address that well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And we have another $10 super chat from Wealthy Demon. And they said, in your opinion, if we were to design, develop, and field the F-47 from Boeing, would Congress reverse their decision on selling the F-22 Raptor? And would Poland be the first customer if they do?
I would doubt that we would sell the F-22 because generally a lot of that technology is probably being used in the F-47 as well. I have a feeling the F-22 might just be such a high security sort of a risk to sell it to anyone, at least because of the technology involved. We might not ever sell the F-22 to a foreign crowd, I don't think. The F-35 we will, but not the F-22. So big thanks to you once again for support. I hope that does address that well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And we also have an 8 from Baba Nan. And he said, thanks for the news. And he kind of suggests for a future merch drop that you have a shirt with the words, if it wasn't for folks like you on it, and Slava Ukraine.
That's an idea. That's actually an idea right there. We'll have to try and give that a shot. But a big thanks to you so much once again. I hope that does address that well. And also, someone called Daddy. Oh, what a name. They said, why do you guys sound like this shit is a game show, like Wipeout? Weird. Is a Wipeout what you call it when you get swamp ass? Banned! But anyways, with that, we're on to the next one.
All right, and our next one goes to Dan Brooks, who puts in a 5. He said, good evening, LSA.
And good evening to the whole of the LSA. And a big thanks to you for the support. And with that, we're on to the next one.
And our next one goes to FL Camera, who put in a 5 as well, and said, didn't show up in my suggestions. Anyway, I got COD Mobile reinstalled on PC and playing BR and some multiplayer as you catch us up. And rock on LSA.
And thank you so much for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. I gotta say, I'll be having fun with that. Me personally, I play Train Simulator these days. You know, you gotta keep it on the train theme. But big thanks to you so much once again. I hope that has addressed that well. And with that, we're on to the next one.
And we also have a, let's see here.
Oh, did we?
Let's see what happened here. Hold on a second. Let me go back and take a look. Let me go back and take a look at something real quick. I think I might have missed one, but let me go back and double check. There was a C1 in the spreadsheet, but I'm trying to see if there was maybe a second one here. I'm going to look for it real quick. But anyways, moving on to our next one. This one goes to Lumi, who puts in a 5. And they said, LSA, let's go Enforcers, and love the channel, and keep up the great work, LSA team.
Hey, thank you so much for the kind words and enjoying our work. Your support helps us to keep it going. And I gotta thank you massively for that, because if it wasn't for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to be here and keep this thing running right now. So huge thanks to you once again. And with that, it's time for us to start moving on into the next one. But before we move on into the next one, Matthew, did we miss a super chat? I went and looked personally. I did not see one, but maybe I missed it as well.
I see one in here. Also, by the way, Elfany's the one asking. I see your super chat in here, but it's a $5 super chat. They're saying they put in a 10. I'm not seeing that one. So if you're referring to the other one, we do have that one. It's coming up as like 3 away.
Oh, okay. I'm so sorry, Alphany. I was actually looking for a 10 because all of our super chats are YouTube color code super chats. So when you said a 10, I was looking for the ones in the yellow. And apparently yours would have been a light blue. So that's why I didn't see it. But with that, we are getting around to that one. It will be here soon. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And we also have a 5 from Good Day Playin', who said that the Chernobyl power plant has recently lost power today in LLT LSA.
That's true. We did cover that earlier. And LOT, LSA, and a big thanks to you. And with that, we're on to the next one.
And we have a 5 from Shadowskill54, who said, do you think NATO could put together a special forces mission to take back the power plant and quickly set up new power lines to fix the problem?
We could, but that would start a war with the West, and also that would pretty much make the nuclear power plant a battlefield at that point. So we could try, but it really wouldn't do anything rather than just change the forces that are there that are shelling the place. And then the Russians wouldn't be shelling themselves like they are right now. They would be shelling NATO forces instead. But I do thank you for the support and helping this channel to keep rolling. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And our next one here goes to Elfany, who threw in that 5, and actually threw in another 5 as well. So
It's a
the
10.
first one here, the first one says, yes, the first one says, I'm sorry, I thought I sent 10. You don't have to read those, just making up for my mistake. And also, no worries, by the way. I will admit, for a minute there, I went into a bit of a panic. I was like, wait a minute, there was a 10? I'm like, how the hell did I miss that? I was looking at the thing all night long. It's like, if I missed this, I could be going insane in the head, which wouldn't mean anything new, but I'm just joking, of course. But thank you very much, Elfany, and no worries whatsoever. But Elfany's second super chat here, the one we were getting around to, says, do you think the pep talk with top brass was a false flag to cover for a serious military meeting about war with involving Iran, Russia, etc., behind closed doors?
I don't think it was, me personally. Like, some people are holding out hope for that because that would be the most reasonable thing to come out of it. I actually think it was what we saw. Like, I think that's what it was, which was really sad, and really disappointing to me because that seems to be putting a pep talk and, you know, a little smile in front of the camera for the public in front of our actual force preparedness and combat readiness, in my opinion. But I do thank you for the support and helping this channel to keep running. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And this one goes to the Polish drunk once again, who puts in a 5. And it said, Utah Lake smells like LDS and dead fish. Hey, what you got wrong with the Mormons, man?
What
like,
the hell?
Out here, like, picking fights with the Mormons. But he said, greetings from Eagle Mountain.
And hello to Eagle Mountain. Eagle Mountain. That's where in the hell is Eagle Mountain? Eagle Mountain. Where's that? Oh, yes. I see you know your mountains well. That's on a plane. Like, that's not even near a mountain. Like there's mountains around it, but that ain't no mountain. That's a plane. But beyond that, it's still cool. And I gotta say that it don't smell like no Mormons. Mormons don't smell. I knew Mormons growing up. I'll be honest with y'all, folks. I'm not really, like, you know, I'll be a little bit of an open disclaimer here. We don't do religion on the channel, but Matthew and me are Christians. And, you know, I don't really agree a lot with Mormon theology on much of anything. But one thing I will say about the Mormons is that they are very nice people, and are very community-oriented. And that's something that should be commended inside of the Latter-day Saints faith. That's something that I think is actually a very positive tribute of the people who follow that sort of a religion. But still, I hope that is
Honestly, I don't
addressed.
have any problems with the Mormons either. I don't understand why people have a problem with them. The only thing I would have a problem with, though, like for example, if there is any type of like friction between people that are Mormon and non-Mormon, I would have a problem with that. But I don't really care. I'm like, if somebody chooses to be Mormon, I'm like, that. It's a free country, and people have the right to choose what they want. So even though I may not necessarily agree with what Mormonism stands for personally, it's like I'm not going to like go out of my way to like say something about it. I'm like, why would I? It's like that. It's not my place. And also, I'm like, it's a free country at the same time too. So who am I to go around judging other people?
Yeah, I mean, and I'll be honest with y'all, I don't really care who anyone is a member, at least of a religion of any type, unless if someone is using that religion as a guise for radicalism of some sort of violent or disruptive radicalism. Then I'm not a fan of them, and that really goes for any group. Like the let's see. The Westboro Church is a Christian group, and then all of the other crazy radical groups of every other religion that exists out there. I'm not a big fan of those people. I find them disruptive. And it's not because they're of that religion. It's just that they use the religion as a cover for pretty much just trying to go around and be disruptive as hell. But beyond that, the Mormons aren't disruptive. They're very community minded, civic sensed, very nice people. Whenever I ran into them, I personally think they're nice folks. I don't really have an issue with Mormons. I mean, maybe I don't know. Like if they're discriminating against people, and we go out to Utah and we see that that's the case, then maybe I'd have a problem with them. But from my personal experiences with them, which is pretty plentiful, I mean, we knew at least, I would say, 12 Mormons growing up that were here in Alabama. They were all nice people. I thought they were pretty great. Like I would never become a Mormon, but I still think they're great folks. So I hope that does address it the best I can. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And our next one goes to Akita, who puts in a 5. And they said, thank you for what you do, providing this amazing coverage. And my question is, will war break out prior to 2026 in LSA?
I would doubt that it's going to break out prior to 2026. I think at this point it's going to be sometime around next year if it does happen at all. So with that, I hope that is addressed it well. Big thanks to you once again. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And this one goes to James Reed, and he puts in a 5 as well, and says, what do you think about Ukraine hitting Russia in Kaliningrad, and why have they not?
Why has Ukraine not hit Russia in Kaliningrad?
Right.
They would have to fly through a NATO country to be able to do that. No one's going to give them permission to do such a thing. They have conducted sabotage operations at Baltsk inside of Kaliningrad, but they've never conducted any sort of drone raids because they would have to fly through NATO airspace to get there eventually. So I hope that is addressed the best I can, and we are on to the next one.
And this one goes to Siri, who puts in a 5. And they said the letter AE is pronounced like A in cat or bat. And Savoyer is a magic place and great surfing in the winter.
And thank you so much for the support. I've never heard of people surfing in the winter. That's crazy. But thank you for sharing that with us. And a big thanks to you once again. And we are on to the next one.
And we also have a 5 from Kyle Padell. And thank you very much, Kyle, for that support right there. He said, I don't know. I don't know, Kyle, if I can read this one. I'll see if the enforcer wants to read it though. It's a pretty tough one here.
Uh, I think I'll pass, but I do thank you massively for the support and helping this channel to keep rolling. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And we also have a 5 from Rowert. And thank you very much, Rowert. He said, thanks, Enforcer Matt and LSA for a great channel.
Hey, and thank you so much for the kind words and the support and helping us to keep this thing running. And I hope I address that the best I can. And we are on to the next one.
And we also have a 5 from Blue Diamond VII, because I don't know how to do the whole Roman numeral thing, but they put in a 5 and said, if World War III happens and we fight Russia and Russia loses, will the country get split into separate parts like Germany after World War II?
I would doubt it because they're nuclear armed. We would most likely, if Russia did collapse, treat it as though it was an internal domestic matter in Russia. And while we would try and move to secure the nukes for whatever the successor state would look like, we wouldn't really interfere much more than that, at least from what I would think, based off of prior historical examples. And so with that, a big thanks to you once again. I hope that does address that well. And with that, we are on to the next. Also, I see some people saying really quickly though, Matthew, they're like overly nice, red flag. No, that's not a red flag. I mean, like some people are overly nice, but you can tell that they're sleazebags. Like Mormon people are nice, and they're just nice to be nice, at least from my personal experience. I had a friend, two friends actually in school that I thought were pretty cool, and they were pretty nice people, like legitimately nice people. They were Mormons, and I was like, hey, these people are just nice to be nice. It's like a little bit crazy like that. But anyways, with that, we're on to the next one.
And our next one goes to Laser314, who puts in a 5 and said the pep talk was because we made fun of the birthday parade. And they said, quote unquote, fat, lazy soldiers.
Maybe. Actually, that's what I was thinking. That the purge might have been over. Like, if it was going to be a purge, was that nobody was marching in step on that parade. It was bad looking. Like, that's why we don't do parades. And also, if you do a parade, it takes so much practice and timing, coordination, everything. It's taking a whole bunch of people away from doing anything that matters to get them in a parade, so that way they could be in front of the camera for a minute, which makes no sense. But anyways, a big thanks to you for the support. I hope that has addressed that well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And George Tencher put in at 4 and said Mordor is a blight on the rest of humanity.
Oh yeah, I'd agree. Nixon says bomb 'em. But anyways, a big thanks to you for the support. I hope that has addressed that well. And we're on to the next one.
And up next, a big shout out to Hands on Fire, who put in a 4, along with Blizath, who put in a 3, and Dubstep Kid 801, who put in a 2. And a huge shout out to all three of y'all very much for that support, and we do appreciate that. We also have a 3 from Bob Anon, and Bob said, could the Chinese be training their drone pilots? And that's what these are over NATO.
I don't think they'd send them on vacations into Europe to do it. I think they just do that in China. But what I think they're doing, if these alleged arrested Chinese nationals are the ones who actually were doing that, is what a lot of Chinese nationals have been doing in the United States. Like, I fly my drone over Newport News shipyard. Good luck, everyone. That kind of a deal. It would be something similar to that, trying to gather intelligence, which is something we know the Chinese are heavily invested in doing all the time. So I hope that has addressed it well. Big thanks to you once again for support and helping this channel to keep running. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And we also have a 2 from Kimini Johansson, who said the Swedish Loki anti-drone system have been deployed to Poland.
And I actually did hear about that. We didn't cover that today, but a very interesting thing to hear and great to hear at that. But a huge thanks to you once again for the support, and we are on to the next one.
And we have a 2 from High C King, who said Dmitry Peskov is the Russian Jeff Foxworthy. Who's Jeff Foxworthy?
I do not know who that is. I do not know who that is. Let me pull him up. Oh my god, he is! No freaking way! He looks just like this guy.
Yeah, who is this guy?
I don't know. I have no clue. Who is he? What does he do? He was an American comedian, actor, writer, and radio and television host. So he's just kind of like a personality. He looks just like the guy. Like, that's weird. Yeah, that's literally Peskov. No joke. I do not think Jeff Foxworthy looks like a rat, though. I'll say that. Jeff Foxworthy is an upstanding American personality here in the South. I respect him greatly. But with that, I hope that does address that the best I can. A big thanks to you once again for support and helping this channel to keep rolling. And with that, we are on to the next one.
Also, by the way, I've never heard of this guy at all, honestly. And also, why I don't know why I'm being called a certain name in the live chat. I don't know what I did to deserve this, honestly. I didn't know who this guy was. I'm telling you, I genuinely didn't know. But anyways, moving on to our next one here. This one goes to Queen Tara, who puts in a 2, who said, oh, that's his catchphrase also, by the way. I didn't know that. I thought people were calling me that. I was like, what did I do? I was like, I didn't do anything. But anyways, Queen Tara put in a 2 and said, congrats on 501,000. And also, it's 512 now, by the way. And I said, love from North Alabama.
Big thanks to you for being from North Alabama. And also, a big thanks to you for the congratulations on hitting 501. It's now 512. And we're actually getting on up towards 513. Isn't that crazy, folks? We only hit 500,000 just a couple of days ago. We're already getting towards like 550 or something. It's crazy, really crazy. But still, a big thanks to you so much once again. I hope that has addressed that well. And we are on to the next one.
And a big shout out to Alex Callio for putting in a 2, along with DB for also putting in a 2, and Mark Andre Burnett for also throwing in a $2 support. And thank you to all three of you very much for also helping to keep the channel running. And we also have a 2 from Bruce Lee, who said Russia can't get oh, I don't know about this. I think this right here might be a dirty joke coming from Bruce. But Enforcer, do you want to check it out and vet this one?
Oh, it is. but a big thanks to you for the support. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And we also have a 2 from Bruce Lee again. He clarifies. He said, totally talking about air defense, of course, and LSA.
Well, I mean, maybe. But still, a big thanks to you for the support. Hope that this addressed that well. And we're on to the next one.
And we also have a 2 from area code 757 who said, thanks for the content, brothers.
Hey, and thank you so much for enjoying the content and helping it to keep rolling. And with that, we're on to the next one.
And also, a big shout out to Wyatt Logan, who put in a 2. He said, "I'll miss you all. I'll be working when you see this in LSA." And
Dang.
also, good luck, Wyatt, with the new job, by the way. He said he got a new job, a new career. So, good luck with it, Wyatt, and hope it's going well. But, Enforcer, what say you?
And I hope it's going well as well, Wyatt. And I gotta say, I hope you're having a great time at work, and I hope that when you hear this later, things turned out well. So a huge thanks to you once again, and we are on to the next one.
And this one is going to go to Braden Bartholomew, who puts in a 1. And also Sam Crenshaw, who put in a 1 as well, along with Z360, who also threw in a 1. And thank you to all three of y'all once again for that support and also helping to keep the channel running. And with that, folks, it is now time to jump into our live chat questions and see what the nice, good, juicy questions are saying. But first of all, we need to get our Morse code decoders. Tonight, we got Paul Schultz, Kevin J, Mason Miami, Joni Dog, Norm Pritchett, Arabo Garbo, her Royal Fluffiness, Kush Cubiotex, and Sire, and they said the Morse says for tonight, the historic happening day after day really is something else. I tell you what, and LT LSA.
I'll tell you what, but that is the sound of money, and I'm so glad that y'all didn't autocorrect that to what, and y'all added the what in because it was supposed to be what. So I got to congratulate the Least Spring Signal Corps for 1, getting the Morse code message correct, and 2, leaving it in its unaltered original form. Y'all got that down on the nail. That was the Morse code message tonight, and I got to congratulate the Least Spring Army Signal Corps for getting that correct time and time again, day in and day out. And so, big congrats to all ya once again. And with that, folks, it's time for us to move on to the live chat questions. We're going to be answering as many as we can until we hit the midpoint of this hour, which on our screens here on the computer, that will be 12:30 our time. For everyone who's working off of Eastern time, that'll be 1:30 a.m. So with that, we are on to the first live chat question of the segment.
And this one goes to AF Kaplan. It said, regarding the Zaporizhzhia Nuclear Powerplant, is it known in which direction the prevailing winds are blowing in that area?
Unfortunately, I wouldn't know right now, but generally we've been hearing that it's actually blowing in a northeasterly direction, at least at the moment. So I hope that addresses that well, and we're on to the next one.
And we also have a question from Avari Mandabratis, who said, how can the U.S. military operate in the midst of a government shutdown? And if Russia is going to strike while the shutdown continues, when would the most opportune time be?
Unfortunately, I'd have to declare ignorance on that because I do not really know how the government shutdowns, funding-wise, impact the military's readiness or ability to defend the nation or our interests. So,
They still
unfortunately,
work.
oh, they still.
They're considered, yeah, they're considered essential. So they're working, but they're not getting paid.
Wow, that's like indentured servitude for those folks because it's not really like they can refuse to work when they're not getting paid. That's real bullshit right there, actually, folks.
Well, they still get their money. Like it just accrues. Like they're owed the money. They just get paid at a later date. So it's not like they're forfeiting their pay. They get paid, but it's going to be later on when the government reopens.
Well, yeah, but think about it though. What if you're off base, for example, and you're in off base housing? What do you do? Like if it's a 30-day shutdown and you're like living paycheck to paycheck right then, what do you do? Do you get evicted? Like what happens then? That's real. That's like BS, honestly.
Let me check something here. Let's see. Does U.S. military get paid during shutdown? Let me make sure I got this right because somebody's saying I'm wrong.
Yeah, because Cody Fritz said, but they got bills. That's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying. Like for all the people on off base housing, what do they do? Like they're just not getting
I'm
paid.
looking. I'm looking right here. It says here, I'm not going to name the article, but it's from a pretty reputable source. It says, no, military members do not get paid despite working during a government shutdown. Compensation for military or members of the military is funded through the government, and if it's shut down, they can't get paid. So, if based on what I'm seeing and what I know, a pay for military and civilian workers will be delayed until a funding deal is reached. The whole deal with the funding problem is they literally claim they have run out of money. So if they don't have any money, they can't pay people. So that's why there's a government shutdown because nobody's getting paid. But with the military, though, they don't get to go home; they get to go work, and the other people don't. The other people get furloughed.
That's so stupid. That is stupid. Like ridiculously stupid. Anyways, with that, we are on to the second to last question of the night.
And this one goes to Baba Nan, who said, do you think the Chinese are training pilots for future Taiwan operations?
I would say maybe. But as far as the drone thing, they would mostly just be training them in China and not send them somewhere they could get arrested for spying and espionage. So I hope that does address it the best I can. And with that, we are on to the final question of the night. And so, who was the lucky last person who threw in the lucky last question of the night?
All right. And also, before we get to that, by the way, let me check something else real quick. So yeah, I just wanted to verify this. I want to let y'all know this because this is something that truly like irritates me a lot, like very very much. When the government gets shut down and everybody's getting put out and furloughed and stuff like that, all the federal agencies, the soldiers who enlisted to serve the country are not getting paid. The Congress still gets paid. Like these people that are literally causing the government to shut down, they still get their paychecks. That needs to be changed ASAP. Like that honestly, I have no idea why they're getting paid while the government shut down. They should not be getting paid if the military's not getting paid. Considering they're the ones who hold all the cards, then they should change that. Like that really honestly irritates me to the point of just pure anger on that one. I have no idea why they're getting paid. But unfortunately, do you want to weigh in on that before we get to our last question?
I believe the president's also still getting paid as well, technically.
Let's see. Let me check that real quick. I don't want to lob these accusations here without knowing.
Yeah, that's
Yeah,
fine.
the president still gets paid during a government shutdown here as well.
Alright. So
Yeah,
everybody involved in the shutdown gets paid, but everyone else who was not involved in that decision to allow the government to shut down, they're up the creek without a paddle right now. Isn't that stupid, folks? That is the dumbest thing. Like it has, like, I'm not trying to make this partisan, folks, where it's a Republican or a Democrat thing, because we don't do that here on the channel. But isn't that just the stupidest, damnedest thing that everyone involved on both parties, on both ends that are involved in the shutdown right now, because there's really no fingers to be pointed. They've both gotten in an impasse and they're not willing to meet in the middle of the road, so that's why the government shut down. Isn't that stupid that all of them get paid and then everyone else just gets left holding the chair, holding the table, holding the house, holding the bills? Nobody else gets paid. That is stupid. Stupid as hell. And also on top of that, folks, I would have to agree with Enforcement Man on that. That should be changed to where when the government shuts down and nobody else is getting paid, the president and the Congress members don't get paid. Put a burner on everyone's ass at that point to where they have to get something done to keep the funding going. Otherwise, they're also not getting paid as well, and they could be in the same boat as everyone else. Lead by example, lead from the front, cut the funding for the salaries of the Congress members and also the president during a time of a government shutdown. That's absolutely stupid that that's the case. Anyways, with that, I hope that gives my 2 cents on it. That's just the dumbest thing ever. And so with that, folks, we are on to the final question of the night. So who was the lucky last person who put in the lucky last question of the night?
and viewer is Cody Fritz, and he said, "What do you think about the possibility that these drones in NATO are coming from the Russian ghost tanker motherships?"
I would doubt it, me personally. Like, the Boracay is an alleged perpetrator of an action, according to the French, that's like that. But I'm actually doubting it a little bit, because I'd find it weird that a ship that important to the Russians financially would conduct a risky action that could get it seized by a foreign country. I'm personally thinking that it probably was that Rapucha-class landing ship. Like, it would be hard to operate from the deck of a Rapucha, but if there's a will, there's a way, and they could do it. And so that's what I'm personally thinking. That would be my 2 cents on it. But with that, folks, it is time for us to round out this stream for the night. I hope you all have enjoyed greatly. We still have about 9,000 people here, and at the peak tonight, there was 19.6 thousand people, and 124,000 people have watched this stream before it ended. We're entirely honored and greatly appreciative to have had each and every single one of y'all here over the course of the night. And if y'all have enjoyed, please make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. We are currently sitting at a whopping 512,390 subscribers. And the Lee Spring Army is growing end over end every single day. So please make sure to join us, because y'all can expect to see us tomorrow at 10 p.m. Eastern Time to cover the next 24 hours of news from around the world. And if there is enough news in the middle of the day tomorrow, y'all can expect me to make the Short Wars summary. So with that, folks, we will see you all either on the Short Wars summary or the stream. And with that, good night, good luck, take care, stay safe. Slava Ukraini, Hurram Slava, long live the Lee Spring Army, and long live the Republic.
And with that, folks, thank you all for joining us once again tonight. And a huge shout out to the 124,000 plus people that were here by the end of the stream. And we will see all of you tomorrow night at 10 p.m. Eastern for the next Nightly War News stream. And maybe midday tomorrow for a short war video if the news is crazy enough to put a video out. So with that, folks, thank you all for watching. And of course, Slava Ukraine, Hero Slava, get some rest, and good night.